measure it flat, it contradicts that. I'm spitting flat facts and that. And I know you don't like that. Google Maps is flat, it presents elevation profiles like that. I'm a spitting flat earth king. Sentence has a ring, doing my own thing. If earth was a big roast chicken, factually finger licking chicken, we just got the measurements missing. I'm spitting eggs and begs, begging the question lesson. I've said it before, time after time. I'm the spitting flat earth king of rhyme.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a Coffee, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patrons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So, a massive shout of thanks and appreciation to Robert Edward, Pablo Dela Cruz, Smith Tools and Purchase, Level Plain Poem, Vitali Z, Colton James, Survive the Spin, Thomas van der Zander, Measured Flat, Tiers Morgan, Mitch Kennedy, Rod, The Name's Burley, JMels24, Unimento, Iron 26, Retro Bill, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Troy Shuker, Hairy Blade, Mobile Mac 777, Rob W, Del West Watson, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Abraham Mohammed, Skeptic 936, Texas Mike and Chow Young Cat. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Links, as I say, to Patreon are below this video. But with that, I will hand across to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
And I was thinking, I started to ninja, and explain how don't have a model and that all maps are flat, and I started to go into how the maps are made and how they're all globe projections, and I'm like, I feel sorry for people getting into this just now and just starting to get all this information, and even just starting to get the earth is flat stuff, that's measured flat stuff. They're, I don't know, they're coming into something that's really interesting, and the people that have been in it for years are just now hopefully getting to where it's like, it's just measured flat. Move on.
I hope so. I mean, I'm appealing to Normie. Just turn your speakers down. You're causing horrendous feedback for Surf Daddy. So bad that I can't talk while you're here. You need to turn your speakers down or turn your headphones down, but something's causing horrendous feedback. So presumably your speakers, if you're using them, just turn them down. Anyway, I mean, I'm hoping to appeal to Normie, right? That's to say, the people I want to sell the book to are normal people, and in some instances I've extracted large sections of heliocentric rhetoric because I just think it's not necessarily going to be digested particularly well by your average Joe. Now, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of advanced heliocentric nonsense in there peppered with the flat measurements, but ultimately I think what I want the overarching message to be was what my wife told me she got out of the book, having finished it. Obviously, she's helped in the editing process, so it's not like she's unfamiliar with the material by the end of the process. But once it was done, I said, well, what do you think of the book? And she says, well, I don't know, it's sort of, I've done it so much, it's hard to give you an answer to that. And I'm like, well, what's the overarching message that you take away from the book? And she said, the Earth is measured flat in all circumstances. That was her reaction to it. You're like, well, that's exactly what I want to get out of it. I want your average Joe to recognise that there's no big deal. So it's just measured flat. And if somebody says, well, don't you understand that? And then they launch into a calculation of Earth's sphericity, the normal guy can just understand that that still doesn't change how flat Earth is measured and the tools and functionalities of the concepts we use, like miles. That's nice and simple.
Well, that is hopefully what the normies are going to get out of it. And actually, I'm kind of glad. I'm hoping that the book will be something that the anti-flat earthers will just ignore. And it's only going to be normies that are going to hopefully read it.
Maybe. I don't know either way. I mean, I would hope that there's a certain amount of heliocentric rhetoric that your average anti-flat earther will just look at and assess how right I am, as opposed to the overarching message. They're just going to flick to the gravity page and go, has he got the rhetoric correct or not? For your average, let's call them anti-glober, they're going to maybe look to it to see if they can affirm how they understood the questions that are in the arena to date. So there's going to be certain aspects of, like, I don't know, gas pressure without a container for the debunking of outer space. They might flick to that chapter and see if they can, fully immerse themselves in that rhetoric of a so-called argument. Whereas the guys on the cutting edge, us, half the time we're the ones that have developed these arguments, so we're the ones that are going to be looking for something completely different. Our ambition, I would imagine, when reading my book, you, for instance, Surf Daddy, you're going to read it with a light of, will this be digested well by normie? But you also want to take something out of it. That is to say, you want some enjoyment of just the pleasure of reading the book. And for that, I've got things like the interwoven name changes of given key characters that if you're not on the inside, you don't care that there's a guy called Art Horizon World. He just becomes a character in the book that describes my waking up to the subject. But you don't care that that's not a real person. If you're on the inside, it's not an inside joke. It's just a name change. But for you, if you know who the person is, suddenly it is an inside joke. So it's skirting that border of making it appeal at multiple different levels to multiple different people, and in different social circles and different belief structures. Now, the only thing that I didn't do too much of was trying to incorporate in the ability for it to literally appeal to an anti-flat earther. I can't empathise with them when I pretty much despise them. So from that perspective, I'm always going to write it from my point of view, in flat earth terminology, rather than making it digestible to an anti-flat earther.
Well, maybe that's what I was just trying to say. I flipped through Amazon, and McLovin has put in his big review of that other book, and it's absolutely lame review. It's it's cringy, but people like him, I don't think will be able to really do much damage with his bad reviews and stuff. Kind of for the same reason he hasn't been able to come on the show for a couple of years now. His last moment was, "Where's the guns, Nathan?" And I think that's the last I heard of Poon on your show. So I really don't think he's going to be able to do much with trying to make it seem like the book is totally out of touch and full of non-facts and full of flurflies, and he's just not going to be able to do that. So I'm excited about that.
We've given specific individuals. You're talking about McToon. He's had the same thing put to him in excess of 100 times. The 100th literal rendition of me pointing out that he's measuring Earth flat with elevation angles came to him personally while alleged to be in Antarctica, calling from a position of measuring Earth flat at the moment I'm saying it. And his, as you put it, response with "where's the guns?" is quite literally his direct response to me saying that for the 100th time. So it's like, well, if you haven't managed to respond to it for 100 repetitions of it in comment section, you use a red herring fallacy of the guns that aren't there with an official visit having been booked that's your best response. I mean, you're going to put your best foot forward when you know you're being, I was going to say televised, but broadcast, to a wider audience that isn't your own, therefore less sympathetic. You're going to try and put your best foot forward. Now, if you translate that into a book review for someone like that specific individual, you're like, well, presumably you're going to look for that part of the story, aren't you? If you're that guy, you're going to look for that bit of the story and critique that with your main focus. And again, it then boils down to, well, what are you going to offer in response to that? You could do one or two things. You can ignore the fact that you're literally a subject matter, albeit under a fake name, and go to the, I don't know, suggestions that it's poorly written, or I don't know. But that would get immediate critique from somebody who said, well, why didn't you critique the bit that you're in? And if they critique the bit that they're in, it's like, well, there's a very specific incongruity, or whatever the word is, with their own rhetoric that would need to be addressed if that was the case. So it's like, well, if you're going to address it, address the flat earth proof that's been pointed out. And the story includes the fact that it's been pointed out 100 times. So what are you going to do? Ignore it for the 113th time in the response in a review on an Amazon book site? I mean, fine, but people will immediately critique that in and of itself. You know what I mean? They'll go, well, why didn't you address the flat earth proof that was attached to your name? Go ahead, John.
I thought it was, if penguins didn't have guns, Earth was a globe.
Well, no. I mean, his go-to when he got me on the phone was to say, there's a 24-hour sun here. And you've measured it flat. Oh, where are the guns? That's the general progression in summary of the discussion that took place, with a lot of interruption in between, a lot of talking over to try and avoid that being delivered concisely, which he eventually did. But no, I mean, you can extrapolate that if no penguins with guns, then Earth a globe. But like I said to the last person I responded to, it's like, well, if you're going to suggest that there's a sphere, this is the map channel, well, then you're not going to derive it from the lack of guns in the hands of penguins or the magnetic field lines. You've just got to go to the rhetoric that's alleged to be suggesting the sphericity, which is, in terms of measurement at least, very well defined throughout the historic claim to be information. And I'm not going to question the historic validity or even the characters that are alleged to exist having claimed to have measured tangent points below surface level and heights off surface level and elevation angles, all the stuff that we go through. I'm not going to dispute those things, but that is the rhetoric that you need to appeal to. If you're going to suggest sphericity, it's like, well, you don't have to stick to your, mainstream rhetoric that the heliocentric system's built on. You can be so bold as suggesting that it's achieved in a different way as you one little man 500 years after the fact. But that won't change what heliocentrism's foundations are. You're not going to, just because you've got a trowel in your hand, ain't going to mean that you're going to be altering the full foundations of the building. If you offer a little touch-up job, that is not what you'll ever do. So it comes back to, well, how's Earth suggested to be a sphere? Well, with flat Earth measurements. And attempting to go to a different part of the world in a directionality and an altitude that requires you understand implicitly how flat Earth must be measured so you don't crash in the plane or go the wrong way, then, before you've even landed, you've utilised principles of Earth measurement. And the principles of Earth measurement aren't applicable to sphericity. It's always extrapolation from flat Earth measurements. So it's like, well, where are you going to go? Well, there's no guns here. That is the only way to go when you're trapped, isn't it?
Seems there's a lot of people in the past few years who painted themselves into corners that they can't argue out of, because in order to argue out of, you have to point out what your character is.
But this isn't about character, is it? I mean, when you say explain yourself, I don't know what you mean.
Well, like you were saying, I was actually proud to be, I think, part of the audience when Toon called in live. That was excellent show, excellent broadcasting. He painted himself into a corner. He can no longer talk about TFE without being pointed at as the guy who's the where's the guns guy. So he can no longer he can't do a review of the book, of his chapter, how you got it wrong, or whatever he wants to say, because of his painting himself in the corner of being that guy. He's ick. Just reading his review. If you go on Amazon and read his review of the Betty's book, it's classic tune. It's creepy. It's he's got nothing other than just being the character that he has become.
That's all he ever had.
Right. And that character is no longer relevant in the anti-flat earth realm, which the very majority of the people are not in. So that's why it's good that normies are being addressed in the book. Or that's the main audience.
It's become a little stereotype. When I describe the fart-sniffing, Batman T-shirt wearing, obnoxious, adenoidal, fart-sniffing dweebs that we have to oppose, past tense, had to oppose, seemingly had to oppose, I'll get there in the end. That's all he's representative of now. He just becomes the stereotypical version of that particular dweeb who's overvalued heliocentric information that has no practical application. So you're like, well, you know, being the on the front line of defending a religious rhetoric by way of being an adenoidal, rather obnoxious, fart-sniffing dweeb wearing a Batman T-shirt, you're like, well, what do you mean? Who are these people? Surely no such beast exists. Well, enter Toon. Here you go. Here's a stereotypical version of that guy. Yes, he is extremely obnoxious. That's right. He does think he's Batman. Yeah, he thinks he's fighting for injustice with his information that's not helping anybody. It's like, sorry, how many boats have fallen over the horizon to need this to be a safety critique when you're getting your celestial navigation qualification to go out on a boat and measure it flat, like you did with angles to the star? Are we going to be falling over the tangent point horizon that you have ascribed such high value to? No, but that is, like I say, the stereotype of that particular group. I mean, there's a whole bunch of others that could be sitting in exactly the same stereotype, right? You know, Craig, Fight the Flat Earth, or Professor Dave. You know, all of these fart-sniffing, self-indulgent, rather obnoxious beaters of society that believe in a sphere and think they're Batman. You know, there's loads of them. But like I say, the stereotype is normally the one that just makes the most noise and makes themselves look the most stupid. You know, where's the guns? Well, that'll get marked in history. For what? Like, if you had a desire to affirm your own bias with a 24-hour sun and then you go and get it, you're like, well, why wouldn't you walk away? It reminds me of gamblers. You know what I mean? It's not enough to get the win. You've got to do it again. You've got to have it again. It's hopefully going to be bigger. You keep going all in when you should just step away. It's like if your ambition is just to appeal to the masses that you're right because of a 24-hour sun, without breaking down the affirm and the consequent, it's just like, if that's good enough for you, good. But take what you perceive to be a win and walk away from it. If you've spent $50 on lottery tickets and won 25, don't stamp your feet and keep spending the 25 that they give you back in cash. But that's what he's doing. It's like, you're onto a loser. You're a degenerate gambler by comparison. And you can't help yourself. Well, that means you end up losing. You know, you're at a net perceived win if you just hold up the single lottery ticket with 25 quid on it. And you don't mention that you spent 50. But if you keep stamping your fists on the counter and demanding that you win next time, well, they'll just take your money off you. And in this case, it's like, well, if you just keep stamping your fist on the table because you need my affirmation that because there's a 24-hour sun, that means you win. I'm not seeking such affirmation. I don't need it, right? But you do, like a degenerate gambler, you need to feel like it's been worth it, it's been justified. And proving it to the guy behind the counter who says, look, you never win on these tickets. Why'd you keep buying them? I mean, I'll keep selling them, yeah? but why'd you keep buying them? No, watch this next one. Okay. Just take the L or perceived W and go on your way and you'll be a lot happier. But that's the problem, isn't it? They're not happy because it's like gambling in that regard. There is no genuine win to chase. All gamblers end up down. That's just how it is. If they didn't, then there'd be no reason to do it as a business. It wouldn't exist. But from the perspective of heliocentrism, it only exists to brainwash the brainwashed. Well, you're already brainwashed. Why can't you step back? Well, because it's not enough, is it? You need a little bit more. You need me to also agree with you. Otherwise, why would you be telling me?
That's it. That's perfectly it. They need me to agree with them in order to tweak the argument, so that they can feel like they've still got some kind of gotcha and some kind of hold on heliocentrism that I kind of missed. It's like, no, dude, we just measure it flat, and that's it. Well, why do you need dip angle then? Why do they? Okay, well, you figure out how to navigate, because you obviously need to get somewhere, and you'll figure it out. But it's not flat. It doesn't mean it's flat.
It's the guy that ends up with the ugly fat girl that he doesn't really fancy. There's plenty of people out there with, let's just call them ugly fat girls, that they do genuinely find attractive and love dearly. And that's all that matters. In other words, when somebody comes along and is insulting towards that person's woman, they'll turn around and ignore them because they don't care. In other words, it's like, oh, you're just an obnoxious person being rude to another man's woman. That's the attitude. Because who cares if you like the look of my woman? She's mine. Whereas the guy that, can't bear the fact that he's with what he knows to be an ugly fat woman, and that's how he also sees her, he's going to turn around to that guy and go, I need to convince you that she's got a really pretty face. I need to convince you that if she just lost 5 stone, she'd be a supermodel. I need to convince you that she's actually more intelligent than most of those other pretty girls out there. I need to convince you. It's like, why do you need to? Do you love her? Do you find her attractive? That's all that matters. And if you know from this perspective that your belief in a ball's correct, that would be all that mattered. You wouldn't need affirmation from anybody. You wouldn't need to go out and convince the world. You wouldn't need to fight the flat earth. You just know and you'd get on with your day. It's the doubt that leads them to do what they do. I mean, I can totally relate. It's the same here. It was the same for me for many years in flat earthing. You tell yourself that you know it's flat because it seems so obvious. But when you're confronted and someone says, well, no, actually, it's not. That perception's wrong. Let me adjust your perception for you. There's plenty of people that will attest to, well, that put me in doubt. So then I continued to affirm my bias, at which point you're like, well, you haven't got an understanding of how flat it is. You've got a bias towards it for whatever reason. Now, that may be the case that even though it was correct and they could have just walked away, they still don't. They need to affirm their bias, even though it is correct. It works both ways. Yeah? The same applies to the guy who's got a supermodel and is telling the world around him how fantastic she is. Like, why do you need to do this? Oh, you need everyone else to know how fantastic she was, because that was the main purpose in finding her. That one was the one that let everyone know how wonderful you are by reflection in her beauty. So therefore you need to draw everyone's attention to her beauty. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of women out there that just end up spinsters and on the shelf and being written into books that have been stolen about how they can't keep a man. There's plenty of examples of non-beautiful women and fat women that, not only are manless, but will end up childless and justifying why they're in place of somebody more popular than they. But there we go. There's all sorts of different people. My point is, that in this instance, when you've got the guy who needs to justify to the outside world his love of another woman, or for the gay community, your love of another man if you're a man, for the lesbians, your love of another woman if you're a woman, whatever's your flavour. My point is, you, if you were supremely confident and just loved that woman, wouldn't need to. Same goes for flat earth. If you just know it's measured flat, the arguing with others stops being consequential. It's like, well, what are you going to do? I don't care if you know. It's inconsequential to me if you know. In fact, you want me to know something that's wrong. Therefore, you become irritating and frustrating because you're not pleasant company as a result of your own biases, meaning that you don't want to spend any time with them at all just because they're as unpleasant as people can be. But when it came to, originally at least, the perception that there might be a friendly discussion to have with others if you were unsure, you're immediately told, no, I, who are ultimately unsure, will need to tell you how wrong you are to affirm my bias in how right I am. It's like, well, if you know, why would that be necessary?
Well, if we would only recognize sea level in the beginning. But speaking of that book, one deck sent me a picture of the stolen book, and I'm hoping that that's not it, because they're using your freaking title. It says "Welcome to Flat Earth," but then it also says "All roads lead to Flat Earth."
Well, like I say, the fact that they've stolen one particular part doesn't exclude them from stealing all of it. So not surprising. I actually said to Chuck this morning, by coincidence, can you just remove the undertitle, "All roads lead to a flat Earth," so the book can just be titled "Measured Flat." I think it's too wordy if it's got an undertitle. Now, the fact that the various incarnations of the titles for my book have also been stolen, why would that be surprising? You know, narcissists don't have originality. They know how to recycle. They can repurpose and repackage. So when it comes to utilisation of other people's fantastic words in citation, that's what's ultimately, from what I now understand about the purloined book, what's just the book. That's it. You know, there's a thinly veiled story of a spinster over the top of a load of citations and links. You're like, well, originally when the help was offered, what I wanted was somebody to go through my material and cite it so that it had good citations. You know, double check the facts, give it good citations. So it's not just wiki. Now, in reality, who gives a shit if it's wiki or not? It's my book. If wiki is the most concise explanation for my uses, I'll use wiki. But, you know, in my mind, it's like, no, I need a higher brow of citation, hence you ask for help. But in putting them there, the thieves have decided that that's the most important part of the book. Okay, well, it's just not the case. But in stealing the overarching skeleton of my story, attaching the story of a spinster and riddling it with hyperlinks, they've not had enough originality to even come up with their own title. You know, there was 2 titles that were under suggestion, both of which came out of my mouth to ascribe to my book, and they've nicked both of them. Shocking. Not in the slightest bit surprised. But, you know, my book won't be titled that. My book will just be titled Measured Flat. Because it's a lot more snappy than having 2 giant, long, wordy titles.
They also can't use that because, as we've discussed before, Measured Flat was kind of rejected in the beginning.
Yep.
From flat earthers, and that's the one thing that they know in their hearts that you absolutely own as far as a coined phrase. they wouldn't do that at all. So I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think that works out great. Measured flat. That's it. That is your term, Nathan.
Well, regardless, I mean, when you're in the drafting process, you come up with a working title. For my book, it was Housekeeping, because that was the overall framework. And then as time progressed, as the editing progressed and more likely time dragged on, you come up with other titles. You know, how does this sound? How does this fit? And I remember punching into an AI bot, you know, is All Roads Lead to a Flat Earth a good title for a book? And no, it wasn't. It was Welcome to Flat Earth. Sorry. That was what I punched into the air. Welcome to Flat Earth, and is this a good title? And it came back, no, because it would frighten people off. That's to say, while you're trying to entice a welcoming demeanour in the title, welcoming them to a foreign concept that they're averse to will put people off. And I read it and sort of shook my head. I'm like, no, what does AI know? You know what I mean? But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, yeah, it's right. You know, you want flat in there, but not flat Earth, because it has been poisoned, intentionally poisoned, turned into a community of people that you wouldn't necessarily want to associate with. So you don't want it on the front of the book so that people can read it and go, oh, I'll start looking down my nose at this person on the train that I've never met before because I can see the words flat and earth right next to each other. So you go, from that perspective, you don't necessarily want to alienate someone before they've even read the book or be put off holding it if they've got a hard copy. You know what I mean? So from that point of view, it's not a great title. It's too many words. It conjures an image. And I don't know if you were there when I was going through the titles of the chapters with my wife, and I'm like, ideally I want them to be one word, like each chapter, troll, curve, you know, things like that, so that they're snappy, you know, to the point. So you remember, oh yeah, in the troll chapter, not in the any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon formerly known as Earth curve chapter. That's shit, isn't it?
So the just to go back to the AI, the AI was not affirming your preconceived bias, and you rejected it because it didn't know what it was talking about. Am I getting that right?
Kind of. I remember I was doing it on my phone and I was walking up to drop a parcel off a microphone and I did the search on my phone, asked it the question, and when it came back that my title wasn't a strong title, as opposed to whether or not the belief in a flat earth needed validating, it took my context of my question specifically to be about, is this a good title for a book? And when it came back no, I'm like, well, what do you know? Because it didn't affirm my bias. Obviously, I'd come up with that title.
Well, I don't want credit or anything, or to be recognized or given a gold star, but I do believe 2 months ago, I was talking about how quote unquote flat earth, just as the term, is totally out of my vocabulary, and I'm not going to be using it, and I'm not going to be a flat earther and any of that stuff. I'm staying away from flat earth, flat, and even the word flat. Just saying. But that's why. Just,
I don't want any credit, but you know.
No. This isn't about me. It's just about my observation of the culture zeitgeist of the realm. That just the word flat Earth is what is triggering people, and that measured flat. And without, I thought I have always liked all roads lead to a flat Earth because it tells what the book is about. But now that we're talking about it, you said I'm just thinking about taking that off, and I'm like, oh no, wait, what? But it absolutely is the best thing. Just looking at Amazon this morning, I Googled the title of Betty's book, and there's tons of flat Earth books. I haven't heard of them. Most of them. I think they're all just AI produced, and they're not even real books.
No, there's a lot. Nathan will tell you, right? Chuck said there's a lot of flat Earth books.
Right, and they all say frickin' flat Earth in them. You know what? That 99% of normies don't know Nathan. They don't know anybody in the flat Earth community, and they're not paying attention. So it's no big deal to not have flat Earth in your book title. Coming out cold, measured flat. That's it, man. I think that'll be great. And then just trying to find a hook in order to get some PR going and to get normies and middle to larger size broadcasters and people to look at it and talk about Just the measurements. Keep the frickin' flat Earth out of it.
Well, listen. What was the word the guy used the other day? There was providence.
Yeah, Providence.
Yeah,
It's all been providence. So whatever way it's going, it's out of our hands now, in the hands of the Almighty.
You know, I was thinking about writing a book, and what I was going to do was hang around a predominant flat earther who has a fairly large base, waiting to, good looking, waiting to release
Breaking up.
thing.
Can't hear you. You're broken up.
Drop and rejoin, Refracted. We need to hear from you.
And it's so freaking hot in here. I don't know why. It's not even summer yet.
Because you have no air conditioning, that's why.
Yeah, I know I have no air conditioning, but it's not even summer yet. I have to put the fan on. I've got no choice. It's just too hot. Maybe I should just use my dynamic mic. And
I don't know how you guys do it.
just turn the fan off when I do the intro, and then I'll turn it on for the majority of the live show. And I'll just use my handheld mic. Hopefully that'll do better for mitigating for the wind noise. Hey, John. Let's have a little check.
Yeah, radio check.
Yeah, not bad. You said you're thinking of writing a book because you want to hang around a fairly prominent flat earther, and then you broke up.
Oh, I was going to say, and then wait until he convince him to write a book, and then steal it at the last minute, and then take claim for it. That was my idea. Someone stole it already, though.
Oh, someone stole the idea of stealing a book from somebody and writing one. Oh, I see. That was your idea, was it? 2 weeks ago.
Not only that, it makes you really. I guess when you become a thief, you got to tell yourself you're right, so you become stupid and use stupid analogies and comparisons. I thought he was. I really thought Huey was a smart guy. He is freaking dumb. And the other freaking wonderful, brilliant mind using a Shakespeare analogy. That's just stupid. But you got to tell yourself these things. You know?
I listened to a Chase Hughes video this weekend, and it was basically talking about how you can't lie to a someone who is an empath. And I was trying to think of how this related. It does. Anyhow, a lot of things that he's been saying in a lot of his videos strangely apply to this situation and dealing with those type of people who would steal a book and make excuses and lie and stuff like that. And it's shocking to me how much we don't think about people's character until it's too obvious what they're doing. I kind of had a sense of it, when was it Neil? I think it was you talking about when we started talking about ghostwriters and stuff like that, and then you get kind of this weird tingle in the back.
I didn't like that. I stopped joking about it immediately. Yeah,
that's when I was talking about how that I hated sarcasm. Sarcasm as a form of humor is really just a form of lying. And then getting away with lying because you can just pass it off as, I was just trying to be funny. You don't have a sense of humor. You can gaslight people with sarcasm all the time. And so when it gets too sarcastic and, you're the ghostwriter. Oh, you're the ghostwriter. Well, maybe I should get paid for this. No, just kidding. that kind of stuff. That's
Hey, honey, how much should I get?
there you go. And then, ooh, there you go. Something's creepy, something's cringy, something's not right. You know, it's like watching a McToon video. Reading his freaking review on Amazon of Betty's book. You know, he has a picture of him. He's got his hair done up like what's his name in little buckwheat or whatever in those old black and white movies. And
Yeah, that's because we were talking while you were introducing the show.
yeah, you should make it so that we're not allowed to talk during the front of the show. It gives us a little bit of courage, and we just ignore you while you do your intro.
I don't mind, as long as it's not causing feedback when I open the bloody line. There we go. How you all doing?
Dad,
Had a
you
good
gotta
weekend?
be quicker on the trigger.
I'll figure it out.
What I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to turn my fan on, so it's really, really, really hot for whatever reason. We're only in spring if you're watching this on a re-up, but for some reason it's like 25 degrees in here. So for that reason I might actually transition to using a radio mic today, just so I can put my fan on. Hopefully it won't make a horrendous amount of noise when I do so, but I just can't sit here in this boiling hot heat. And it's all sealed up so that it's not making other background noise, but now it's got a fan running, so it's just one of those things. So today there will definitely be a fan running throughout my show, so I don't boil my brains. Yes, Nathan, I'm sure we're all really concerned about your comfort.
Well, we thought you had to go do something. How's everybody doing?
I haven't had a sound check from Discord yet. Can one of you from Discord, Dank or Diego, Flat Earth Cafe, Mickey, Zark, can one of you say hello so we can get a sound check from Discord?
Good morning, guys. I'm underneath a car, so I can't talk right now.
Thank you, Diego. Much obliged. So yeah, hopefully a little bit closer to my book coming out. I contacted the publisher today, although he probably hasn't even woken up by the time I sent the email at 9 a.m. UK time. Hopefully he's opening it as we speak. Just asking him, if you've got an ETA and when the book's actually going to be available. So lots of people have ramped up in terms of they're asking me, because obviously they can hear me on my show talking about it being imminent now. I've sent it off to the publisher, but I don't know, I haven't got any updates, and for a week I just wanted a week off, so I haven't done any work in regards to writing or editing books, which was nice. So all of last week, when there was consistent shows and consistent edited videos and shorts and so on and so forth, I didn't have to do any of that work. It was off my desk, so I very much left the publisher to it. But now it's been a week, I think it's appropriate to chase them up and say, any idea on when I can actually tell people it's available? And this week I'll write a press release, actually get it into a proper formatted style with all of the relevant information, along with my little blurb that will also go on the back of the book, being taken as the basis for, or the foundation for that press release. That bit's already done, but the rest of the information in terms of its availability and indeed becoming part of the affiliate program, that will all get written up this week, and hopefully, maybe it'll take another week, hopefully not, but I said last week it'll be a week or two with the publisher, and then hopefully just come out imminently. But I haven't got any updates. Hopefully by tomorrow my publisher will get back to me and say, yes, I just need to address this, or this is wrong, or actually whatever. I don't know what he can come back with, but whatever he does, if anything at all, hopefully he'll just come back with a date and say, here you go, this is when it's going to be available, or it is now available, here's the link. So we'll see, but I'll keep you posted. Lots of people have been asking me about the book, and yes, I have seen your emails. There's a couple of you that have asked repeatedly, and I've just started to ignore your emails. I know that's kind of rude, but it's just because there's no update. If you're a YouTuber, at least, I know 007 was asking me about it and saying, I'd love to buy a copy of your book. I said, well, you're a YouTuber, therefore you can join the affiliate program, get a free copy so you can read it prior to having me on your show, and then just interview me about it with an affiliate link below your video, and then you'll get 30% of the sales of the book. So he was like, oh, great, yeah, I'm really keen to get the affiliate link sorted out. So, there's already at least a couple of people that are keen to become part of the affiliate program and start generating a little bit of revenue off the back of my book. But if you're one of those people, maybe drop me a line, nathanoakley1980@aol.com, and I'll add you to the mail out list for the book release so that you can then have the information at least to hand if you did want to become part of the affiliate program. If you didn't, or you just wanted to interview me about it, as I say, it's hopefully coming out imminently, and therefore I do need to actually start making some moves to actually contacting the people on my mailing list and saying, would you like to have me on your show to talk about my new book that's just come out? So you'll get that if you are a videographer, or indeed that information's been passed on to me by one of my audience. That is to say, you and I, if you are that videographer, have a shared member of an audience that's given me your info. So if I don't necessarily know who you are, I'm being made aware of your presence because of somebody else who is subscribed to me that suggested you. So those will go out hopefully maybe this week, maybe next week, depending on when the book's actually released. But it's all ramping up and getting excited, and can almost taste it.
And by the way, the shows have been outstanding since you finished editing the book.
Without blowing my own trumpet too much, Neil, I watched all of my own shows. So during the editing process of the book, your mind's distracted. You're not focused on this bit, which is the main bit. It's the means to an end. The book is there as a justification to get in touch with people and say, do you want to come and talk about flat earthing, the community of flat earthers, the last 10 years of the subject's discussion, the debate, the lack of debate, the actual reality of Earth being measured flat. All of those things are things that I like talking about. And if I've got an excuse to be in front of somebody, that's what the book affords me. But ultimately, it's the talking about it with next man, like you now, Neil, that I'm interested in. It's this bit. And that suffers when you're actually doing that work. And over the last week, as you say, when I'm taking a break from doing that work because I've finished it and it's off my desk and with the publisher, it's meant that the show quality has gone up. And as a consequence, I've gone back and listened to each of my shows and gone, oh, I like that little bit. I'll trim it out and make it into a shorts video, or I'll turn that into a long form video. You know, that happened 2 or 3 times last week with the material that I was putting out. So like I say, without blowing my own trumpet too much, I think the quality of the Flat Earth debate shows has been improving since me finishing doing other things. I'm no longer distracted from flogging microphones. I think I've got half a dozen left at best, and then the book's finished. It's off my desk, so this is it now. This is temporarily, at least until the book comes out, all I've got to focus on. Obviously I still homeschool my kids and I've got a beautiful wife that I love dearly, but other than the things that are outside of the realms of what I'd call work, I don't have anything else to distract me from it. So yeah, I'd hope the quality of the shows is improved.
What's nice is that you're not talking about flat Earth as much as you're just talking about how it's measured. It's measured flat.
On the shows?
Yeah, that's what I've liked about your shorts and stuff like that. That aren't, they're not shorts, but yeah, the shorts that explained how the measurements made the ball, equatorial plane, everything's flat. You're not talking about flat Earth, quote unquote. You're just showing here's how it's measured, which is what I'm hoping that the book will help normies to think about.
Well, we were discussing this in the pre-show, weren't we? So the book is aimed at multiple different levels. That is to say, from the tippy top of the spear, us in this arena now, me and my panel, taking some enjoyment out of me describing events that they'll be familiar with names that are quite amusing in terms of their alteration from the original character or the original person that does exist but has had their name changed to make them into a character for my book's purposes. Well, that's something that isn't an in-joke. You're not going to care, and I'll give the same example I gave in the pre-show. When you're reading about a character called Art Horizon World, you'll just read about what that character has to offer for the story as you read it, in terms of his reflection on me, the author of the book. Therefore, when you're reading about him as a normie, you don't care what Art Horizon World means. But if you're on the inside, it can become an in-joke, which is a big no-no if you're writing screenplays or books or anything. You don't want to have in-jokes that only the small circle of people that are associated with the publication know about. That's bad. Same on stage. You don't make jokes that only the cast know about. You make jokes that the wider audience can relate to for it to be appealing to the wider audience. So from that perspective, I don't necessarily want the wider audience to concern themselves with Art Horizon World or what that has a slightly deeper meaning for somebody who's on the inside and knows who that person actually is. It doesn't matter. It's not relevant to the story. And most of the time, these names are just made up anyway. People ascribe themselves pseudonyms. So if you alter their pseudonym, who cares? It doesn't really matter to the story, right? But it matters to somebody who's on the inside that's maybe reading the book because they want to know how Normie would take it when they're reading it. Like, would this chapter come across well to my cousin if I gave them the book? Would it be digestible to them as an anecdote about the processes of going through a flat Earth community rather than measuring Earth flat, if that's the level that you're taking from the book? And on that subject, there's levels of people, events, and ideas peppered throughout the book, so that hopefully as you, whoever you may be, read it, you'll be able to relate to it on a level that's entertaining while still digesting certain complex ideas and learning about certain events that have happened over the last 12 years. So, I'm very proud of it. I'm really keen for it to come out now, hence me chasing up my publisher this morning. You know what I mean, though, when I say you guys will be studying it for how you think Normie will take it?
That's what I've been mostly focusing on, because I deal with Christians who are deeply embedded in the heliocentric doctrines and philosophy, who think that God created our realm heliocentric, and they're just as bogged down in the what they've been brainwashed with all these years, and as the Globers who were atheists and stuff like that. It floors me. This is this is why I've been looking forward to a book that just lays out how we measure the Earth and the practical aspects of everything we measure. Mostly because heliocentrism has no practical use. There's nothing, absolutely nothing, that you can point to that is used in a practical sense in our everyday lives, which is why no one thinks about it. And everyone thinks it's true because we don't think about it. Just like we don't think about measurements because it's true. It's just how we do it. Do an elevation angle. Trying to talk to somebody and tell them that an elevation angle requires a flat horizontal baseline the other day. And it just got to the point where I said, move on. He couldn't understand why I needed the baseline of an elevation angle measurement, why it has to be flat. What about dip? Literally. And so something that just points out, here's how we measure stuff, is going to help me when I'm talking to people who are turned off immediately by the word flat Earth. So that's why I'm excited. That's why I'm looking forward to how this will be received by people who we're calling normies, but people who aren't so cognitively blocked up that they immediately jump on you as a cult member because you said the words flat Earth.
But that's how it's propagandized to be. I can totally relate to that, right? When certain individuals hear the terminology flat Earth, they relate to it in the way that it's been peddled out into the masses. Now that is to create a community called flat earthers that are generally speaking conspiratorial in nature, that aren't focused on Earth measurements, and juxtapose them or put them in opposition to people who have inserted a high degree of value upon measurements of a flat Earth that extrapolate out into heliocentrism, so that they can believe that there's a sky vacuum, or that the ground's curving away or is producing a tangent point below the measured flat surface level, or whatever, right? When those two groups can be put in opposition to one another, you can have the fart-sniffing dweebs come out as the intellectually more superior in the mind's eye of the average audience member, and the flat earther be perceived to be a conspiratorial guy who's talking about a conspiratorial subject, because the world not being spherical is a conspiratorial subject if the consensus believes that the world is spherical. You can juxtapose it in opposition to the obviously accepted to be sphericity of Earth's surface, and how certain people who call themselves flat earthers say Earth's not spherical, like we all know it is. That's how they create the idea of flat Earth being a conspiracy. Now that can then operate in isolation over here to people who actually measure Earth, people who are flying planes, making maps, measuring the deviation in the altitude with respect to sea level, measuring sea level itself, measuring earthquakes, measuring anything to do with Earth's surface in any respect, because they all absolutely require at a fundamental level that Earth be flat. That's how it's being measured. Any deviation from its flatness will be described from the flat measurements of the flat miles that you can describe a deviation from. Ergo, the principles and axioms that are used in Earth measurement are and can only be flat, but you can't have people who want the world to be believed to be spherical have any association with the idea of something different to how Earth is measured. So Earth being measured in linear distance, parallel to an eye level, for example, doesn't include the words flat Earth. So you can have that segregated over here and set in opposition to people, like I say, who've ascribed value to the notion that what boats are falling over a horizon when you calculate a spherical Earth based on flat Earth measurements, and then ignore them. Ignore the flat Earth measurements that you've produced this idea that there's a geometric tangent point horizon for boats to fall over, and argue tooth and nail with people who say, no, boats don't fall over the geometric horizon. If we see the bottom of this boat, we're seeing too far compared to a ball and its limitations. So you've got this controlled opposition narrative where you've got people who want to believe there's a sky vacuum, rockets, your average 12-year-old boys bullshit, set in opposition to people who say, no, that isn't true. Like I say, leaving the geographers, map makers, cartographers, builders, surveyors, planners, people who are navigating the ocean or sky, leaving them to be able to launch a rocket missile that's used in defensive strategies and plan its trajectory with respect to horizontal linear mile distances when you're planning the arc of a ballistic missile or something to blow people up with. All of those things can then function in isolation and off the, no pun intended, radar of the people saying it's just not spherical. Now, we are hopefully building a bridge, or at least I would like to perceive my book that's about to come out as that sort of bridge, where your average normie can separate the facts in the matter when it comes to Earth and its measurement from the propagandized controlled opposition version of flat Earth, which is a conspiratorial group of people who say Earth's not spherical. That makes it a dirty word, makes flat Earth dirty, and it is dirty. There's plenty of people out there that say, I don't want to call myself a flat earther. And it's because the controlled narrative of flat Earth is dirty. It's perceived as bad by your general normie. He looks at somebody who says that they're a flat earther like they're an idiot. Now, that's engineered to be the case. Like, there's a backwards nature to that particular person. And that particular person, if they take in earnest the notions of being a flat earther, will start to investigate heliocentrism, whistling immediately past the flat Earth prerequisite measurements used to achieve it, like their opponents will also do. Everybody in the flat Earth debate ignores how flat Earth gets measured. That's how it's been engineered to be. And your average flat earther is perceived to be stupid, therefore societally, or even within the community, there's plenty that go, I don't want to be called a flat earth. There's been plenty of occasions that I've said that, and others like me have said that. Like, they don't want to be perceived to be the controlled opposition's version of what a flat earther is, because it's not a good thing to be a flat earther. Now, knowing that you can map, chart, sail, fly, build on Earth as a flat plane is a prerequisite of building on, flying on, navigating or mapping Earth. But it's, like I say, it doesn't include the two terms sandwiched together, flat Earth, when you describe how flat Earth is measured. Yeah, flat Earth's a conspiracy. That's how you control the
Well, they
opposition.
made it that way. It's not, but they certainly made it that way.
Well, you just have to lead
flat Earth.
Go on, go ahead, Wondek.
Just say flat Earth's a measurement, isn't it? It's as simple as that.
Yeah, the reality of flat Earth is just geography. It's just the measurement of Earth's surface in miles or kilometres. And any description of Earth's measurements will deviate from that horizontal plane of reference that's also got its own measurement called sea level. Mean sea level is a measurement of an average of the level nature of the oceans that connect all of the land together. So you can describe how high or low the land is with respect to a common reference that has been measured. So then you can fly planes above it, or sail across it, or map it, chart it, describe the deviations of hills and valleys with respect to it. All of those things fundamentally rely upon Earth being measured as a flat plane and referenced as a flat plane. When you detail anything that deviates from it, it'll be axiomatically perpendicular to a flat plane. So everything that's describing Earth in its geographical terminology is flat. Like I say, if you want the opposition to a globe Earth religious belief to be something other than the actual measurements and reality of Earth's flat surface that's been measured, you need to make it into a conspiratorial subject. You need to make the people that look at that subject be those conspiratorial souls, and then have them fight with people who are of low value, who've invested heavily in their fart-sniffing, heliocentric, worthless information, while they think they're fighting for justice, peace, and the American way, with Batman logos on their t-shirts.
What was the first thing you came to after Flat Earth?
Immediately after I came to Flat Earth, like, the literal next subject was the Mandela effect and clone centers.
Yep.
That was the first thing that was put in front of me. And then when I started talking about Flat Earth with people, the next thing that got put in front of me that was completely alien to me was 9/11 truth. You know, the question I was asked was, are you a no-plane guy? What the bloody hell are you babbling on? And I'm like, well, the planes in 9/11, they're all CGI. You're like, what? What's this got to do with Flat Earth? Now, in reality, the plane, its trajectory, the miles, the height, the altitude, everything to do with planes, forget about 9/11, it's flat. They're flying perpendicular to sea level at a flight level that's called out by ground control, who monitor them on radar that's flat. The miles that are used for the distances are flat. Everything about flying requires Earth to be flat. The measurements and the deviations with respect to those measurements, the altitude acquisitions that are called out from ground control are all referenced to sea level, right? There's no getting away from how flat flight is. But if you can make Flat Earth suddenly be about whether or not planes existed at all on 9/11, you're like, okay, well, that's nothing to do with the subject, is it? That's what you need. Flat Earth to become a conspiracy like the 9/11 truthers, or like the Mandela effect truthers, or like whatever, the Sandy Hook people, and then you can erase them from all existence if they talk about that.
Yeah, I got hit with mud floods. There are no trees on Flat Earth or something to that effect. Just a screw of nonsense.
Yeah, if you can keep it about all this conspiratorial nonsense and tainting stereotype nonsense, then it actually being disseminated to get out there that it's just the Earth being measured flat, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, if you want to control the opposition, you lead it.
Yep, exactly. You got to usher in all this garbage, piece of nonsense between, Joe normies and anti-globers and heliocentric cult determined cultist, yeah, and just make it one big wrangle dangle, and for them to ever just simply know that the Earth's flat when that's just the way it is, from the antecedent of the Earth being a horizontal plane, for you to have any measurement ever of it to measure it flat. There's flat.
Yeah, but the other thing that you must do is make it expensive for general normal guy to not want to invest in it. So you can have them, the average guy on the street, defer their judgment to a higher power. So if you make it cognitively expensive, working out how heliocentric derivations of orbital motion and gravitational accretion and bending pseudo-Riemannian space-time geometry, it all sounds complicated, intentionally, because then the average Joe does not want to invest the time in it and will say, well, I'm being told that it's a sphere, and why would they lie? There's more intelligent people who've investigated this above and beyond me, so I don't need to invest cognitively in it or figure it out. Now, by contrast to that, if you can turn around to them and say, well, it's just measured flat. They go, well, what do you mean? I believe it's a sphere. Okay, well, that doesn't alter how Earth's measured. Do you not know what a mile is? Do you not know what south is? Do you not know what altitude is? Have you never heard of sea level? These are all really basic things. Now, you've got to then enter into something that's even more cognitively expensive if you want to deny axiomatic principles of Earth measurement in geographical terminology. That's cognitive dissonance. You have to engage in defending your previously held belief of sphericity in defiance of measurements and axioms. That's more expensive cognitively than trying to figure out in the first place, when you were deferring your judgment to a higher authority, about heliocentrism when you were told, I was going to say you knew, but when you were told it was the case. If you're told something's true and then it seems like it's too big an investment to look into it, someone else can look into it. When someone comes to you and says, well, this stands in opposition to your pre-held notion that Earth is spherical, because that's not how it's measured. It is just measured flat. A mile is linear. The sea level gives you any topographical deviations, and we're measuring the surface with millimeter accuracy when in juxtaposition to the pre-held axioms of flat linear distance measurement. Those things can't be altered. That is how it's measured, and it is incongruent with your belief. Two choices then before you. Accept that you were simply mistaken and you just hadn't bothered investigating heliocentrism to the extent that you could overcome it with a seemingly insignificant, less cognitively dissonant response, or enter the cognitive dissonant response of saying, no, I defy your belief in measurements because my belief in a sphere is too strong. I will now seek out affirmation. It's like the mapping channel. There's a guy called Wayne who runs a channel called, I think it's called The Mapping Company. Now, he understands and was referenced by us for his understanding and delineation of the measurements in prerequisite when dealing with Earth's surface. That's the millimeter accuracy I just referred to when we're talking about topographical changes with respect to a horizontal plane of reference called sea level. Now, that particular individual has had, I think it's one deck. He said that somebody had emailed him. I haven't actually confirmed it's one deck, although he was suggesting one deck, that is, that he was in Communicado via the comment section of this particular videographer. That's the map company, or the mapping company. So Wayne has then contacted me off the back of that discussion about north. Like, north is really basic. It's a two-dimensional directionality that you can give in an angle that's with respect to an azimuth. It's horizontal. There's no other way of getting around this if you're going to put it into practical application for Earth measurement. This person's tried to justify their now new cognitive dissonance by telling me that magnetic field lines means more north is generally at the top or bottom. Like, no, that's even got a fallacy named after it. Yeah, I think it's the fallacy of false direction, where you incorrectly ascribe vertical attributes, that's top and bottom or up or down, to what is horizontal in nature. That's north, south, east and west on an azimuth that you can give with a degree in the horizontal. Now, that fallacy, although it's got a name, was the weak-ass way somebody enters into cognitive dissonance. Now, most of last week we focused on Wayne and him going from being a reasonable person to a CUNT by copyright striking me because he didn't like his face being on a video that had only got 800 views, thus putting in jeopardy my ability to feed my own kids. But after that's been resolved, he's then discussing how he thinks north is at the top with me via emails after the conclusion of our business that put in jeopardy my ability to feed my kids. Now, that is what you become, a very deeply unpleasant person, somebody who's willing to put another fellow person in the same job as you. That's a YouTuber in this respect. I'm sure he's got a separate job that he refers to in his YouTubing. Well, so do I. It's the same thing. We're both talking about Earth and its flat measurements. But somebody who's in the same sphere or arena, or however you want to describe it metaphorically, would happily put another man's livelihood at risk rather than just entering into a happy-go-lucky discussion about how north, in fallacious reasoning, is the top of something. Incorrect. But nevertheless, that's what you can do. He's chosen choice number 2. Not, oh right, I was incorrect in my preordained, indoctrinated, heliocentric belief that defies the axiomatic principles that I'm dealing on a day-to-day basis about mapping and the accurate to the millimetre surveying of Earth with respect to its top That's the topographical changes in altitude with respect to sea level that Ordnance Survey have measured. We know within the millimetre how high or low the land is with respect to a common reference. And directionality is described with azimuth. It's not referring to the top of anything. A compass isn't used in that way. Now, again, cognitively dissonant though it may be, this person's told me, oh, well, I look at a compass and it wobbles. You're like, sorry, does that change azimuth? No, but a cognitively dissonant person will enter into that. And that's more cognitively painful and expensive than the original endeavour of looking into heliocentrism, which most people deferred to another person. This particular individual, Wayne from the mapping company, deferred his heliocentric religion to a higher power and then just looked into something that seemed separate from it, mapping. Flatness, miles being linear, the millimetre transition of the top of the land, not with respect to an azimuth and north. That's just ludicrous idiocy from an idiot who's become cognitively dissonant as a result of their religious belief in a sphere being challenged. That's Wayne from the mapping company. Now, the fact that that meant he descended into being a complete bastard and threatening my ability to feed my kids as Clover walks in means I'll just sit him on my lap. I did it in one of the pre-shows. This is my daughter Clover, Wayne. Yeah? She needs feeding and I do it with this. Like you're a YouTuber, but you'd rather copyright strike me than enter into a pleasant discussion about how wrong you are with fallacious reasoning about North being the top of something. It isn't. Like I say, it's got a fallacy named after it. But that's what cognitive dissonance does, and it turns you into a bastard. Because it's very cognitively painful, it's cognitively expensive, it makes your head heat up because of the amount of energy that you've got to dedicate to it. Now, most people can look at heliocentrism and go, I don't want to dedicate that energy to it. Someone else has already done it for me, and I already know I'm on a ball, so I can just get on with my day without concerning myself with it. Now, likewise, I can get on with my day moving forward, after about 10 years of research into the subject, knowing that there's geographers out there, and they're measuring Earth. Now, I'm not a geographer. I'm not a historian either when I can summarise accurately how flat Earth is alleged to have been measured by the people who created heliocentrism. I just know how Earth's measured. Knowing it doesn't mean I'm doing it. Likewise, people who are doing it, that's mapping companies in this particular instance, aren't out affirming heliocentrism. They're not building rocket ships and going out to sky vacuums that are measured off sea level also in altitude. They're not doing any of those things. They've deferred that cognitive expense to someone else. Well, so are we. My book will do that for people who read it. For normie. They'll realise that it's not cognitively expensive. The expensive bit, the cognitively expensive heliocentrism bit, is in there, but it's peppered with the very simple to understand prerequisites of flat Earth measurement, which are there throughout the history of heliocentrism. To create a ball for you to believe on, you, if you want to believe in it, require Earth be measured flat for that belief to even exist. Facts. That's cognitively easy to understand. It's just measured flat. Miles are flat. Again, you can enter into, I don't want to accept it. Okay. But partly, heliocentrism is going to be based on extrapolations from these flat Earth prerequisites like linear distance in miles, like sea level, like eye level. All of these axiomatic principles are put into practical use when calculating an alleged sphericity, existing only in mathematics, but ultimately is requiring Earth be measured flat to achieve said calculations. Now, the Earth being measured flat with miles bit is really easy for everyone to understand. Go ahead.
So just because you don't personally measure it, does that make it not flat?
It wouldn't matter if I did or I didn't. When I talk about Next Man and him not measuring topographical changes from sea level, yeah? What I'm saying is you are inconsequential to how this gets done. You won't alter how horizontal axiomatically a mile measurement must be to describe to the millimetre the accuracy of the deviation from that horizontal principle in miles. You saying, I don't want to accept that. So what? You're not doing anything. The only reason you're objecting to it is because it stands in opposition to something that I, at the beginning of the show, set over here. This idea that there's a debate between conspiratards who think the Earth's not spherical and fart-sniffing dweebs with Batman logos on their shirts that believe that the world is spherical. It's completely devoid from people who make maps. The Ordnance Survey use horizontal linear miles, and they describe topographical changes with respect to them. If you can say, well, no. On the maps, where it's got a scale that's flat, with miles that are linear, that apply directly to the measurements of the surface that the map's made with, that's actually a derivation of a sphere that we calculated into existence also with the use of flat Earth, miles that are linear, flat Earth, sea level, flat Earth, perpendicular altitude, flat Earth, eye level. And then we created a ball that means that I can now, in my cognitively dissonant way, say that the miles aren't linear, as is axiomatically required for them to be. They're bent. Okay. You, who aren't measuring the land and are just trying to affirm your own sphere belief, can believe that. It will not change what a mile is, will it? What do you want, Clover? You keep sneaking in. Do you want something? You're on your hands and knees sneaking around. What do you want? My daughter's opening and closing the door, much to my distraction.
Like you say, some people, let me say this, some people are, these anti-flat earthers, Nathan's talking about level, how we reference sea level, aeroplanes flying. And they'll argue the toss about level and flat and horizontal and what that means, but they don't really get into any measurements of curvature because there is none. And here's a reply I got regarding this sort of subject of one of these anti-flat earthers, we'll call. His reply was, level and flat don't mean the same thing. Go and educate yourself on what level means. We can't do it for you. How many years have you spent running away from the definitions of basic terms just so you can feel like you're correct when you're blatantly not? Something can be flat but not level, level but not flat, both or neither. It's not hard to understand. If an aircraft flies following the curve of Earth at a constant elevation, then they are literally flying level. That's what it means. I can't help you if all you're going to do is deny the objective meaning of terms. Your role model, Oakley, loves doing this, and he always runs away when I call him out on it. It's pathetic. They're the type of responses you get to, what level means. And flat, well, that's what they want to argue about, the definitions, rather than saying, we are actually using level and flat when we're measuring the surface of Earth, not curve.
Again, inconsequential to anybody who's actually dealing with Earth that's got a life or death attachment to the information, like in flight, as that was the comparison. Like, according to some dweeb fart sniffer who's allegedly opposing me, so again, let's just deal with that first. Why would you want to oppose me about it? I'm not making these measurements. I'm not affirming altitudes for flights. I'm not using the topographical deviations from sea level to make sure I'm not flying into mountains. I'm not doing any of those things. But dweebs, fart sniffers, still see me in this little corner over here where I'm saying Earth's not spherical. Don't you understand how these terms are defined? Who gives a shit? This isn't an English lesson. I'm not terminalising these things. The definition is inconsequential. We're talking about geography and measurements. Now, if you want to say that a mile, when it's described on a radar or when it's describing altitude, isn't horizontal, then you're delusional. That's how it's measured. It is what it is. And that's how Earth's been surveyed so that planes don't crash into the land. It is just that simple. Now, again, I'm not doing any of these things. I'm not making any of these measurements. But there's a, understandably, preconceived notion that I will sit over here telling you how you're wrong when you say it is a ball. Like, we need to get into a wrangle-dangle about how flat and level are defined. No. Let's talk about a mile. Oh, well, why would we? Well, we wouldn't. There's no need to. A mile is what it is. Now, you can tell me all day long, no, miles bend. Really? So when you, a baller, just so we're back in this for a moment, position where it's ball versus non-ball, you say we've got 8 inches per mile squared. You don't accept that the mile is linear to derive that calculation then? You don't want to accept that. Okay. So you haven't got anything to base your ball on then. You suggest there's a tangent point horizon at 1.22 times the square root of the observer's height off sea level. That's a flat measurement. When deriving a depression angle from parallel eye level, these are all axiomatically required for you to believe you're on a ball, but you want to deny how flat miles are. Well, you've got them in your maths. They're fundamentally and axiomatically required for you to believe in if you want to have a ball to believe in. Now, if we ignore all that crap that's over here, we can just get back to what both sides can agree on. So 8 inches per mile squared is a description of a curve that deviates from a horizontal axiomatic flat principle in miles then. So miles are axiomatically required to be flat by everyone. Yeah, it's kind of redundant because it's just a mile. It's not a debating point. It's not a linguistic point. It's not an English point. It's not a science point either. It's a geographical point that's required to be level. That's what a mile is. To describe a deviation from it for your stupid sphere belief that you've come to me to discuss? Why would you bark up this tree? Do you think if you prove me wrong? Oh, I know why you need that. Because you need my permission. Now you perceive making me wrong the permission. If I can show Nathan as wrong, I can go about my sphere belief for an extra day. I am not the arbiter of what a mile is. Go and talk to Wayne at the mapping company. Now, obviously, when he's describing the millimetre accuracy with respect to the topographical changes at sea level, with the land that's been surveyed and measured, he would affirm, unless he's absolutely brain dead, how linear it must be to remain sound in mathematical descriptive terms when describing a measurement and the deviation from it. Like you, with your stupid ball belief, would have to accept that a mile's horizontal to describe 8 inches per mile squared deviating from it. Axiomatically, it will always hold true as a flat Earth measurement for everybody. Not just me, not that I've got any arbitration over this fact. It's a geographical measurement of Earth's surface that's applied in a linear fashion when you describe miles. That's what they are. You need them to be flat for your ball belief that I couldn't give a toss about anymore when you tell me you don't understand the difference between level and curved. Really? Why would you concern yourself with whether or not I know this? Oh, you need my permission by making me wrong to carry on your sphere belief. You wouldn't need to do that if you knew you were correct, though. What I thought in the matter would be inconsequential, wouldn't it?
Nathan, you're taking their terminologies and making them flat. They held on to that 8 inches per mile squared. You're taking everything away from them. How do you expect them to react?
Badly. I expect them to respond with great vitriol. I expect them to suggest I should have my balls removed, suggest that I should be castrated so I can't breed, have the police sent around, have social services sent round, have my ability to broadcast removed through copyright strikes over and over and over again, endless reports to YouTube. I would expect you to suggest that I'm criminally beating my children. I'd expect all of these things to happen in the face of you requiring miles be horizontal linear measurements of Earth's surface so you can describe your belief deviating in a squared function at 8 inches per mile. You can do that because most people who react to me pointing out that, yeah, you require Earth to be flat too, your calculations are based on flat Earth measurements. I'd expect that person to report me to the police, report me to social services, suggest that I'm beating my kids, suggest that I'm worthy of having copyright strikes for a thumbnail with your ugly face on it because you don't understand what north is. That's what I would expect. A terrible, scummy, awful, horrendous reaction to me when I'm not the arbiter of what a mile is. That's what I'd expect from scumbags.
Just shows you, though, Nathan, on that first example, you got this guy with flat and level, and then you get another guy when we talk about Eratosthenes' measurement saying, one deck, not a single angle measurement, but a collective of angles can make up a curve, whether you like it or not. I hate to break it to you, and you can deny it all you want, but math doesn't work the way you want it to. The Earth is curved, and it doesn't care if you agree. or even if you like it, it doesn't owe you an explanation. All you're doing is showing everyone how narrow and closed your mind is.
That's something called anthropomorphization, where you ascribe human attributes to things that aren't human. In this case, the Earth doesn't care. No, that's projection. You do care deeply about this, and you're anthropomorphizing the world like it doesn't care. Well, no, men measure Earth. And in order to measure it in its topographical deviation from horizontal, you need a fixed way to describe horizontal in a measurement. That's miles and kilometres. That's how we measure Earth. Axiomatically, it's required. It's right there in your Earth curve maths. 8 inches per mile. What's that? The mile bends. How are you going to derive a squared function? You can't. That's ludicrous. Maths doesn't care if you like miles being flat. Anthropomorphization. Yeah, miles don't have any feelings. Maths don't have any feelings. They're just principles that are applied to Earth measurement, in this case with miles. They're flat, whether you like them or not. Whether or not you start barking up this tree or Wandex's tree about whether or not he can get an understanding of what level and flat mean. So this isn't an English lesson, though, is it? You know, miles are horizontal if you're going to try and describe Earth's topographical deviations from that, or a deviation for an Earth curve from that. You'll need it to be flat. Now, again, deny it. Tell me that I don't understand how bent a mile is. Really? What are you going to describe that rate of bend from? From something other than miles? Now, these people are utterly stupid.
0-degree baseline.
But not only that, as he said, a multiple angles equals curve.
Yeah, I mean, that's something slightly more advanced in this particular subject matter, right? If you're going to convert a flat plane into a spherical world for dweebs to believe in, you need a bit of a magic trick to occur. Well, what is that magic trick? Well, it's the conversion from the sphere, if you want to call it the sphere, of the protractor. Yeah? So when you're measuring an angle, let's say we describe Polaris, right? Let's say Polaris is at 45 degrees. 45 degrees literally means flat line along the ground to form the baseline, as Christian just pointed out, and then an angle with respect to that at 45 degrees. That's your measurement to Polaris to give you latitude, right? Well, what are you describing? Well, you're describing something that can arc through 180 degrees with respect to what you can see. On the horizon, 1 degree. Yeah? Behind me, same exact position, but measured through the whole hemisphere of the protractor with a curve to the protractor could be described in opposition to your 1 degree. Yeah? So you can have 170 degrees behind you, 10 degrees off the horizon when you're referencing an azimuth with respect to north, which is another degree measurement, but in the horizontal for which way you're looking with respect to a compass. Now, what you're actually describing is a dome. You've got azimuth in a circle with angles with respect to directionality that is unequivocally flat. Unless you're a, I don't know, retard. Wayne from the mapping company comes to mind immediately, who said, and I quote, "North is generally the top." No, you're just stupid. No. North describes azimuth horizontally in a circle that you can then wrap a protractor around to measure angles with respect to your view, in this case at 45 degrees, of Polaris. So this is what you've got. You've got a flat plane with angle measurements, 2 lights in the sky that you can describe with degrees. So, as another example, in a slightly more realistic real-world example that doesn't have any practical use, you can describe the azimuth angle of the sun and your elevation angle of the sun for a 24-hour period when you measure Earth flat with this principle in Antarctica, for an example, right? That's a very real-world application of azimuth and altitude angle measurement with respect to a planar surface. This is absolutely required, as this is diagrammatically exampling. But then you can conflate azimuth and altitude and suggests that if I paint a really pretty picture of a ball that's been mathematically converted from these measurements, that means that if I draw the word latitude on rings that get bigger as I come down from the top of this protractor, that those are the altitude angle measurements applicable to the surface of the protractor? No. That's the magic trick. The suggestion that the angle of view from a flat plane we measure the stars with is actually the curve of the protractor because that's the surface. That's the trick. That's how you get a ball to exist. And you can say, I'm at this latitude, which means I'm sat on the curve of this protractor. No, you're not. Your measurement is with respect to a horizontal baseline, and if this was the 45-degree angle to Polaris from your position, that's what? The line on a ball? No, but you can convert the arc of the protractor into the arc of the ground you haven't measured this angle from, and call it a sphere Earth. Now, when you do that, you need to tell an opponent who has absolutely no bearing on this system whatsoever, no pun intended, that they don't understand the difference between level and curved. Like, well, no, I understand that you can measure the angles that create the maps, that create the ground positions, that have been used throughout history so people can make their way home when they find new lands in a direction that's flat. That's what's happened. But now we've got the idea that fart-sniffing dweebs can arbitrarily tell you that no, the arc of this protractor is actually the arc of the surface. It isn't. That's not how Earth gets measured. Now, the people who are using this principle of measuring angles to stars for positions that are labelled on maps with, I don't know, coordinates, utilise the flat Earth prerequisites when they're using them in mapping. Like azimuth, yeah? Now, again, you can have some flat earther come along, that's me, and tell you, that's Wayne at the mapping company, that no, north is absolutely flat. And you can say, well, no, I saw my needle move, and north's generally at the top of something because of magnetic field lines. You can do that. But it won't alter what's on screen, how it's used, what azimuth and altitude actually are, and how it directly translates, that's through extrapolation and calculation, from flat Earth measurements of surface level to a perceived sphericity through the arc of the protractor you measured Earth flat with. That's all this globe religion is.
That's correct.
Shout out to Unitox Femu. We are back, Coventry, in EPL, and Earth is flat. I don't know what the EPL is. I don't know what he means by Coventry. I assume it's a football reference.
That's the Premier League soccer.
Oh, okay. So my local Premiership team would be Coventry, and apparently they're in the Premiership now. Well, that's good. I couldn't give a crap. I don't care about football. But thank you for letting me know. Thank you for the super chat, Unitox Femu.
I'll tell you what else.
It's amazing when you...
Go ahead, one deck. I'll go after you.
I was saying it's amazing when you go through this, and we've done it a number of times when Nathan shows that and describes the equatorial plane and the angle and the protractor, and that's how the ball was derived. Because when you first try and explain it to somebody, and I've said it before, it sounds absolutely insane when you're trying to explain about the plane and the angles and the protractor, but just being the perspective view basically, and that's how it's measured. And then they transform it all to a sphere and say that's where it's measured from. But that's how they get the ball, from that flat Earth elevation angle that Nathan has just described. And it does sound insane if you're not new to this subject and you hear somebody explain that. It will blow your mind away probably until you keep looking at it, keep listening to it. And this is exactly how the globe Earth was created.
Last night,
No.
Go ahead. I'll go after you.
No, Neil, I heard you say you wanted the next item. So sorry.
Yeah, but I'm going to change it to stars. So what do you got?
I was going to say, you about confusing the topic. If you convince people to think Earth is measured at you saying openly Earth is flat, you could draw a distinction really helps stop it.
You got a
Does
terrible
anybody
line today,
speak
John. We can
robot?
hardly hear what you're saying. I'm really sorry.
Try dropping and rejoining again, refracted. So last night, my brother invited us over for pizza. He makes a really good pizza. I was thinking of going out, and he's already doing it, but he wants to get a pizzeria. But anyway, make a long story short, when we come outside, it's really country in this part of Alabama, and the stars were out innumerable. So my boys are looking up at them, and they tried to mock me. My oldest son tried to say something mocking me as a flat earther. So I said, we utilize those stars, to find out facts. Especially if we're doing celestial navigation, you're going to utilize those stars. I said, and instead of mocking me, do you realize that you think that we are one of them? And if you were standing on, let's say, Venus over there, that right now this ball would be up and there would be soil in the sky. So who's the foolish one here? You think that we're soil in the sky when we're standing here looking up at stars. And then they accuse me of being like an atheist because I can't tell them certain things. Like there's certain things I don't know. What are the stars? I don't know. To me, they're lights in the sky. Right? I could go to the biblical explanation of them, but I can't tell you what they consist of. I can't tell you how far away they are. And because I can't do this, I sound like an atheist.
Yeah, John.
Oh, can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
I'm sorry about that.
Much better.
Clear.
Okay. I was going to say one thing you could do to really confuse this topic so that people don't understand it is draw a distinction between measuring Earth flat and stating Earth is flat. If you could confuse people into thinking that that's somehow two different things.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to describe at the top of the show. So over here, we have the perception that you saying Earth is flat is actually in opposition as an anti-glober, labelled in name only as flat earther, to fart-sniffing dweebs who say Earth is spherical. So then you've got Earth's not spherical, we see too far, therefore Earth's flat. And no, we don't see too far, we can apply terrestrial refraction at a value that requires a radial value be linear and horizontal in terms of its measurement acquisition is from flat Earth angles to stars. Well, those two things aren't just how Earth's measured. That's geography. Geography is a separate subject. They've put Earth's sphericity into a science category. So then you can have people who say it's flat, but they don't. They say it's not a ball. Be anti-science, leaving the people doing the geography, the cartography, the map making, the charting, the surveying, the building, the flying, the sailing, all of those things in totally a separate category. They can use Earth as a flat plane, and the people who suggest it's spherical can pull from the geographical flat Earth measurements because they need them too. They need them to hold true as axiomatic principles like miles when they're deriving 8 inches per mile squared to suggest that's where your geometric horizon is, below surface level, at 1.2 times the square root of the observer's measured height off sea level for a parallel eye level to give you a depression angle. You all need flat Earth measurements to be very much separate from the discussion about how spherical Earth is or isn't. So yeah, you need to make them separate things. Right, any other comments? Our super zooms really fast when you're having fun. Any comments from Discord?
I would say that there are flat earthers that would like to make that distinction as well. That measuring Earth flat is not the same as saying Earth's flat, even though it is. It's the exact same thing.
Yeah, well, that's the other group of people that need to also, whilst in this category over here, have their position that Earth can be measured flat to create a ball to say it's not spherical be a suggestion that measuring Earth flat to create a ball to say how non-spherical it is isn't the same as debunking a ball, showing you how it's not spherical, therefore proving the contrapositive point that it's flat in false dichotomy. They need you to also whistle past how flat Earth gets measured, because they need to suggest that 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, measured off surface level, with parallel eye level from sea level, has nothing to do with it not being the distance that we can see, because that's too far in a horizontal linear mile measurement. When you compare it to maps that have been surveyed, those two things are different. I can show how it's not a physical distance to a geometric tangent point horizon that's measured in flat Earth miles off a flat Earth sea level with a flat Earth parallel eye level. Those things aren't the same. My debunking of a globe isn't the same as just using the flat Earth measurements to create the globe to show how wrong it is. Any more for any more?
Yep, well said.
I was just saying, see how easy it is to make that seem like it's confusing?
Yeah, make it as cognitively expensive as possible. Control the flat earthers to show how the very complex nature of sphere creation, whilst ignoring how flat Earth must be to create that sphere, can be juxtaposed with one another. Then you have fart-sniffing so-called flat earthers telling you how spherical the world isn't, with their oh-so-fantastic knowledge. Well, I hope moving forward that people will read my book that's about to come out and realise how flat Earth measurements are the most simple part of both sides of those arguments. In order to suggest you're on a sphere, you've first got to create it, and you'll use flat Earth measurements to do it. So having an understanding of how spherical the world is or isn't would have the basis of a flat Earth measurement be understood first. And once you understand it, you don't need to understand how spherical it isn't. The belief in a sphere being derived from flat Earth measurements means that the most simplistic part of that information is the flat Earth measurements. And they are really easy to understand. They're not cognitively expensive. It's not difficult to understand how an elevation angle is measured. There's one on screen. You can do it without any words. You can do it with a diagram. When you describe how flat a mile is, you can understand that, regardless of if you want to utilise that mile in its prerequisite flat form to derive 8 inches per mile squared curvature that doesn't exist from it by calculation, or if you want to violate the principle of a mile being flat because you say you don't understand the difference between flat and level. You're like, okay, I didn't realise this was an English subject. I didn't realise we were in a scientific endeavour when we described how an elevation angle measurement is acquired with respect to a horizontal plane of reference. That's how it's measured, though. It's called elevation angle because it's from the surface. That's what elevation means. It's not in some vacuum. It's with respect to the ground, and it's being measured in two-line formats with vertices. In this case, with right angles below the star, to make absolutely unequivocally clear to anybody who looks at this diagram that Earth can only be flat for this angle acquisition to hold true to any angle measurement ever. If you're measuring the sun for 24 hours in Antarctica, you need this principle to hold true in terms of elevation. The angle is what you're describing. If you're going to describe the directionality of the sun, you're going to describe it in a horizontal azimuth. Those are just facts. But you don't need to understand how you can extrapolate out from azimuth and altitude a radial value to create orbital motion and bent pseudo-geometry. You don't need that. You just need to understand how flat a mile is and you can get on with your day. And that's what we're going to be doing moving forward over the coming years. We're going to be unpacking the cognitive expense that is heliocentrism and boiling it down to the brass tacks of Earth measurement, because it's really, really simple. Anybody can understand it. Even people with a sub-80 IQ can understand how flat Earth is measured. Because if you're going to delude yourself that you are the fart-sniffing intellectual that understands heliocentrism, then you must base it on the foundation of those flat prerequisites that any idiot could understand.
No,
Right,
you
any
must
further
tell me
comments?
what the stars are, Nathan.
I don't know what the stars are. Who cares? When you're measuring Earth, like on screen now, you're going to measure it with respect to a horizontal plane of reference to have 90 degrees below the star, or sun in this example. Any more for any more? No. With that, I will say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering Streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow.
Oh,
Look, to me, last night I looked up and all I saw were lights in the sky. What do you want from me?
Well, I mean, they're not burning balls of gas in a vacuum.
Yeah, that would be a violation of natural law. But if you want to believe that we're one of those lights and that the rest of those are soil in the sky and we're soil in the sky, then go ahead. I refuse to debate this anymore. There's nothing to debate. It's just a measurement, and that's it.
Yeah, that's all it is. Lord bless your son where he's going with this. That he's expecting you to make baseless assertions of what the celestial items are, therefore denying Jesus and creation. That's totally baseless and a non sequitur. Yeah, you're just looking up at the celestial items. You don't have to make any baseless assertions or absolution about them being a man or a woman. Go ahead, one deck.
I'm sorry, mate, to interrupt. I was just saying, it's explained in scriptures that the stars were created for signs and seasons. So that's got nothing to do with a Big Bang creation, has it? It was from nothing. That's what the globe is.
They're created to be lights, to be a light on the earth, along with the sun and the moon, and for signs and seasons.
Correct. So they was created then, wasn't it?
And they're placed in the firmament, which is a big problem for people who believe that the firmament is gone and there's space out there, like Ken Hovind.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there.
That one up there is where they try to confuse two different topics, right? One where they try to assert that the container, while it must be a barrier to create gas pressure, since you don't know the shape and boundary conditions of that container, it doesn't exist. So there's like two different arguments going on, and they're confusing them.
Oh, meanwhile, sorry, mate. I'm just saying. Meanwhile, when we was talking about geometry and not gas behavior.
Yep, back to the red herring fallacy. If you can just keep distracting somebody with a squirrel away from the flat Earth measurements, then it must just be the squirrel. No, the Earth's measured flat, and that's that. Ooh. Yeah, that's part of the wrangle dangle. You just keep on with the scattergunning and the what if infinite regress fallacy. You just won't even know where you started from when it was just us and talking about geometry and that the Earth's measured flat.
Neil's right. Stars are used for mainly navigational purposes, aren't they? They've been used for years for navigating and finding your position on Earth. And like you suggested, like you pointed out, we obtain elevation angles to and from the stars. It's been done for years using elevation angle measuring tools and utilizing sea level. Over linear distances for the radius, length, distance for the circle of equal altitude.
It's how we measured and utilized our flat Earth through navigation and chartering it to get around, so we didn't get lost and die.
Exactly.
Since within the celestial sphere model, the stars are undefined, what good does it do to define them? Wouldn't that invalidate the basis for their religion to claim they know what they are?
I don't think they claim they know what they are so much as they claim that the distance to the star, actual distance to the star, would have to be, based on our math, so many miles. At least that's the argument I've been getting. And it's useless to tell them, well, they think that those stars are infinite miles, and that violates the inverse square law of light. But I think it's more of a distance thing because the trig should work versus knowing what stars are.
Yep. Then you start being tempted into a celestial elevation angle misconception debate about the difference between it and terrestrial elevation angles when no one's claiming or making any baseless assertions about heights and distances to a celestial item, but you're being hubris as a man or a woman that like you absolutely know. No.
But for them
Measure
to
the
say
Earth flat with the celestial navigation along with the terrestrial elevation angles. Go ahead, refracted.
I am so sorry, man. I'm just interrupting people like crazy today. But to assert that they're geometric spheres, you have to give them a geometric position. That's what they do.
Yeah, been pointing out for years, haven't we? And people have been pointing out for years before us. It's just how it's always been done.
I might figure out another way to say this. I don't think y'all are quite getting what I'm saying.
Go ahead, John. Yeah, I'm stoked as well. Detail what you're getting at about the celestial sphere.
Well, there's a celestial sphere, right? And that's where you warp measurement to make your dome that you build your sphere with later. But the points of light in the sky, they claim they have geometry with respect to the Earth, that there's spheres overhead, and that puts them in a sticky position.
Go on.
Well, if they're spheres, they have to have an actual position. Right? You made a positive claim about them having geometry, so you can't just say they're refracted geometry. It's stupid sounding. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, they'll still be using and measuring our flat Earth to give them any trigonometric values that just won't be in reality for their sphere belief. Like if you start to make the baseless assertion that all the sides and their values and their angles and stuff, yeah, you're gonna sound like a fool from previous years supposed debate about it, such as asinine examples of, oh, this one's 434 light years, from the observer to the celestial item of Polaris, but then you're going to somehow make that into solvable trigonometric values for the opposite, along with the hypotenuse and the adjacent. No, that's completely asinine. When we're just using the elevation angles, then you can get into circles of equal altitude for points of fixations and GPs and stuff. Yeah, along the ground that you can actually measure and utilize. So you don't die at sea, for an example, with celestial navigation. Earth metric flat.
Well, it's like when we look up in the sky and see in our field of view that all these lights are spherical, right? I've never seen a spherical star. Have you?
I got some nice shots from Skeptic 936. I posted them in Mr. B. They don't look spherical to me.
Yeah, that's the
No,
beauty.
I've never seen it.
Go ahead, one day.
Just saying, I'm just agreeing with Neil. And John, I've never seen a spherical light in the sky.
And that starts to be the temptation of the wrangle dangle too. Like, oh, you flat earthers don't accept how they are spherical, and you don't know how to use a telescope, and blah blah blah, and you don't know how to focus one. And, God. Meanwhile,
Well, you'd have to measure something.
Yeah. Go ahead, bro.
Just saying, you'd have to give something a shape. You'd have to have, you'd have to. Well, yeah, you'd have to observe it first, and then, if you want its size, you're gonna have to measure it. Not really going to do that with a star.
Meanwhile, yeah, the measurements to those preconceived and baseless assertions of them being spheres to, go off into a red herring fallacy of, oh, what shape they are and what formation they are, and and what aspects do they contain, whether or not they have gas in a second law of thermodynamics violation and stuff and all that. Well, meanwhile, the measurement of the elevation angle to them will be from our flat Earth. Yeah, here's measured flat.
Yeah, well, that's the only way you could take measurements.
Yeah.
Well, have you guys considered the rebuttal of nuh-uh? And
Yeah. Yeah, I call that the Brenda rebuttal.
Yeah. But I mean, do you have a response to nuh-uh?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Well, yeah, it's just the way it's measured.
But a dog bone could be a clock.
How would they know it's food?
Are we now on to the individual that measurements are not evidence?
No, shoes are phenomenon.
No, Neil's referencing something that was an in-joke from, what was her name? I've forgotten her name now. Transsexual woman. What was her name?
Brenda and Professor
Brenda.
Dave, right?
Brenda.
Brenda and Professor Dave.
Professor
You're smarter
Dave.
than me.
It was someone else. What was his name? Can't remember. Bob the science guy.
Yeah, that's it. You're right. It was Bob the science guy. He came on here a few times, didn't he?
At best, you debunk the radius of Earth.
Who was the guy that came on and was trying to teach us about celestial navigation? That was him, right?
Yeah, he's the
Yes.
one that had the whore in his picture.
Yeah. Whatever happened to him?
It's entirely possible that the penny dropped and he ran away in shame.
That's what I'm thinking. For a lot of them, I mean, because when it's so obvious like this, come on, you can't tell me the penny hasn't dropped for all of them. Once they recognize it, but then comes the resistance, then comes the pride, then comes the how I'm going to make my living now. I can't. The truth can't come out, so they go along with it. I think most of them do that. You can't tell me that they can't see what's visual to them. I mean, it's obvious.
Well, what they do is they see it, right? And then they put it in their minds as if they're viewing it uh, orthographically from the side view. And then they try to draw a curve underneath the level plane that they draw out.
All right, fine. Forget about all of this piece of paper stuff. Nobody with their experience of living on Earth has ever experienced living on a curve. So when all of these things come out, all right, we were all taught it in the education system. Everyone was taught this is where you live, and they put you around the globe when you're in kindergarten, and they point your finger in New York. For me, it was New York. This is where you live. That's what we're taught it in school. But there has to be an awakening at some point where, hold on a second, I've never experienced this. All I've experienced is flat, non-moving.
It's too biggie, mate.
Well, Neil, what you're describing is such like it's happened several times through history where such a basic and immutable fact is finally recognized that a paradigm shift occurs. And those things are disastrous for society in the moment. I mean, it benefits it eventually, but in the moment, there is a
Hold on.
breakdown.
Hold on. Was there a disastrous shift when they put us on the globe?
Yeah, I believe so.
How? There were people that disputed it. There were people like Calvin and freaking Luther, and I'm sure there were other Christian men that knew the Bible and knew what it said, and they fought against it. But I don't think there was this. It was disastrous. Maybe for a couple of individuals who claimed to put in prison for it. But that's something we can't know, right? We can't know how it affected people living at that time because we only got certain portion that we could read about, right? So
Neil,
what makes you think it would be disastrous now?
Neil, are you saying the Inquisition was not disastrous?
What does that have to do with the globe? I'm missing it.
The globe and the shift from uh, the Roman Catholic Church, they're all tied together around the same time.
They didn't finish the job. That's the only disastrous part.
And with that, I ain't gonna do it.
Yeah, that Inquisition's called. It's still in play. It's called the Doctrine of the Faith now. They've reworded it. It's the same thing, and it's still alive and kicking. Doctrine of the Faith.
You know, but the erosion of faith in such a large authority like NASA, you know, pretty much a quarter of the science department at most institutions are going to be undermined by this. It will be detrimental to a lot of people.
Yeah, it will affect quote unquote science, but it will not affect geography. Nothing will change in terms of how Earth is actually dealt with. It'll still be measured flat, as it was to create the ball with. But the extrapolation that requires we ignore the flat Earth measurements, that will be affected. That's called, incorrectly, science.
Yeah. And, you know, that's one thing I can agree with QE on is it's important that flat earthers don't try to throw the baby out with the bathwater like Jeranism did and deny science, because some people who claim science lied or were wrong about something. You know,
What does science have to do with Earth being flat, though?
Nothing, but what John's point is that you shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because it's been put incorrectly into the category of science doesn't mean science is wrong. It just means it's been misappropriated so that you don't notice the flat geography when asserting Earth spherical.
There it is. There, that's correct. So it was deliberately put in there.
I can't say it was deliberate because, I mean, I've heard some really smart flat earthers accidentally do it too. So I don't know if it.
Yeah, but the deed was already done, right? So now you're just a product of it. But perhaps if it was taught the way it should have been taught in geography,
I really want to like indict as few people as possible in this, Neil. You know what I mean? Like, let's just get the people at NASA, with the astronauts at NASA. We can really nail them down. But I can't say that there's whole departments that conspired to do this. I just don't see that.
Yeah, I feel the same way when we describe it as being
I'm
the
not
Roman
saying
Catholic
that.
Church. It's like, well, while the Roman Catholic Church might have attempted through their mathematical prowess, attempt to extrapolate out some quite unconventional thinking when describing heliocentrism in the first place. But that doesn't mean that they're somehow guilty of something. It's like, well, without the ability to have abstract thought or think outside the box, sometimes you don't get progression. You know, you can be shown to be wrong, but sometimes you have to have slightly more abstract thinking to progress an idea. Now, that doesn't mean that the Roman Catholic Church are somehow blamable. Like, well, why? If you're charged to try and explain why you've got retrograde, why you've got what they called epicycles, and you come up with a orbital motion, you're like, well, I think I've done well in my maths. You're not nefarious in your attempts to do that, even though it doesn't.
if it don't line up with scripture, you're not supposed to freaking promote it, Nathan. You show me where that lines up with scripture. Roman Catholicism, right? The Pope, right? They're supposed to be reading from the Word of God. So what is that outside the box thinking? That's totally contrary to the creation story. So how is that harmless?
I'm not saying it's harmless. I'm saying that you can't ascribe the same guilt that you describe to an astronaut when you describe the forefathers of heliocentrism. One is just lying. Like John used the example of astronauts, and I was going to interrupt and say, well, that's the only group, isn't it? You name someone else that you can say, I know they're lying without any doubt whatsoever. And so to the point where I'll call them on it if they're in front of me.
Neil
like
deGrasse
M. Scott
Tyson,
Veach. M. Scott Veach came on the show, and he's like, "You calling my dad a liar?" Yes, I am, absolutely, without question, calling your lying shitbag dad a liar because he said he went to space. No, he did not. He's a liar. You know, you can do that with astronauts, but not. There's almost no other group I can think of that you could do the same with, including, but not limited to, Roman Catholic heliocentrists.
They went outside the Word of God and created a sphere.
Well, such a bold heresy isn't necessarily lying.
It's weird, though, isn't it? Even if they have come up with these, you know, like Nathan explains about to explain the cycles and solstices and equinoxes, and they just couldn't explain it with ease, could they? So they've had to come up with what's the easy way of explaining it? Well, if we put ourselves on a ball and explain it like this, and it's more understandable. That's right. So they've done that, say, like Nathan explains when he does that. But then at some point, they know it's not necessarily true. It's just that we've had to come up with this method because it's just much easier to explain certain things. But at some point throughout the history, surely they'd say, well, yeah, it's not true, everybody, but why continue to pretend that it's
Exactly,
true?
one deck. Exactly.
Why don't we just say we had to make this shit up because we can't fucking work it out properly? We don't actually live on this ball, but for some strange reason, we've had to explain it this way because it's just easy for everybody to accept. I don't know. But if you think by now, we'd have said, right, we knew it was a lie. We've had to do that, but now we can, let's get back to the flat earth elevation, sea level measurements. Now we've progressed and we've found more things out. You think you'd be keep digging, but then.
But one deck, maybe that's what's going to happen now. You don't know. Maybe measurement and the comprehension of what a measurement is, this will happen.
You can understand back then, and then without the technology of the television and NASA, Disney, whatever you want to call it. Back then they could all agree, right? We found it. We've progressed now. We can forget about the ball live just to explain the cycles and whatever. But now they've
doubled down.
They've doubled down and said, no, this is a ball, and we're going to show you CGI and images to confirm that it's correct. You didn't have to go down that road, really.
I don't think that's why they did it. But that is an interesting belief. It could be that they've seen a way in which to control the population. They lied about going to a place.
Definitely.
As it turns out, though, that place does not exist. So the ones who actively engaged in claiming they went there become the only people you can ascribe to be liars.
Even if they didn't realise what the lie was. So that is to say, let's look at Neil Armstrong. You can see footage of him testing equipment that is alleged to get him to land on the moon. And I'm in no doubt that he would have been sold the idea of going to the moon to the point where he'd have to put his life in danger and test rather rickety flight equipment to the point where he's having to compress his spine with ejector seats when they fail. Nobody's going to do that unless they feel that there's a greater good that they're working towards, right? But then at some point, they'd have gone, look, we just haven't got the technology to do this, but our president has told the world that we can. For the greater good, we're just going to have to say we've done it when we haven't. Now, that's not saying the sky isn't really a vacuum, lads, so we're going to have to lie about it being a vacuum, so we can get some pictures of Earth from this sky vacuum so people believe we're on a ball. That's not the lie that they'd have been told to tell. They'd have been told, we just can't get to this place that isn't real. It is still real. We just can't technologically get there. Therefore, you are required to lie so that people believe that we have been to this place that is definitely real. So from their perspective, they don't see the greater picture about what the lie implies. But they're still liars. They did not go to a sky vacuum, in spite of all their training leading them to believe that not only was the place real, but that they could get there. And when they couldn't, that was the only white lie in their mind that they had to tell. Oh, well, it's because of our technological inferiority that we have to lie about going there. You're like, no, the wider implications are that that place isn't real, and you're making it real with the lie for the majority of the people who hear you lie about it. But what difference does it make if their motivation for lying isn't the real reason why the lie needs to exist? Their belief is that the lie only needs to exist because we didn't have the technology to get to a place that they still believe is real. I'm sure Buzz Aldrin still believes space is real. And he just had to lie because when he was pretending to go there, they didn't have the technology. Not that space is fake, but the implications are irrelevant. We know they're lying, and the consequences are also irrelevant. It's like, you lied, and I'm going to call you a liar for it. What's that? Well, we thought we were going to be able to go. They told us we go. I don't care what your excuses are. At some point, the lie was put in front of you, and you either had to peddle it or not. Oh, well, they threatened our families and jobs if we didn't tell the lie. I couldn't give a shit. You lied. That's on you now. The whys and wherefores of your being coerced into the lie doesn't change the fact that you had to lie. You lied, that's it. So NASA astronauts are one of the very few exemptions that I'll say, no, I will absolutely, without question, call them out as liars, because I know they are. But everybody else, or most everybody else, that I know of to date has got plausible deniability. That is to say, I didn't know I was lying. I was incorrect. That's different. And there was no malice. There was no forethought. There was no understanding that I was incorrect in my assertion. Totally not the case for astronauts. They know they're not going into a sky vacuum. They know they're not taking pictures of Earth from that area that doesn't exist. But they say they are.
Okay. What about, can you hear me? Hello?
Check.
Yep.
What about the guy that came to Times Square Church? He's an astronaut. He was one of the last men to orbit the Earth. Now, perhaps he was put in some sort of simulation.
What?
You don't think?
No. How do you not know that you're being put into a simulation? That's insane.
Because I went on a ride and I would have swore I was in Africa in Disney. I sat in a thing and boom, I was there.
Did you know that it was a ride?
Yeah, I knew it was a ride.
So
But
you knew you weren't there.
right, but perhaps they're going into this craft and they don't know from what's going on. Perhaps they would do. I just can't see anybody. I can't see anybody who professes to be a Christian stand at a pulpit and say something that's not true. Willfully say something that's not true. I mean, there's got to be. Nah, there's got to be a fear of God. I couldn't stand at the pulpit and say something that wasn't true.
But I mean,
There are
that
many
Nathan's
who
thing, what you're
can.
saying is.
I was just saying, evil exists in a lot of people's hearts, and there are people that can stand at a pulpit and lie their ass off.
To deceive a
Yeah,
whole
plus they might-
congregation.
Well, they might have been told, like Nathan was saying, like, look, we can't get there at the moment. We're just going to have to flag it, fake it. But probably in the next couple of years, we will be there, so we can just sort of meld it all together. It'll look all right. So these people have signed something, agreed something maybe, and thinking that, well, we're going to fake this one. But in another couple of years, we will have the technology to get there and we will be landing. If it's not in a couple of years, we'll be definitely driving past it in 2026.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It's still a lie. And you know how many Christian people they have deceived? Because you look at Danny Faulkner. I know an astronaut. Kent Holvine. I know an astronaut. So they are willfully deceiving people into believing that the Earth is a globe and that we are in a solar system. So
Hold on a minute. You're ascribing them knowledge that you don't know that they have. Them knowing they didn't go to a place, like them knowing they didn't go to space, is not the same as them knowing space does not exist or that the Earth is not a globe. That is
no,
two different
these are
things.
people. Hold on, these are people that, like the guy that came to Times Square Church. He went in a rocket ship and went and saw the Earth, the sphere behind him. He took the pictures of it. I think they're even showing slides in Times Square Church. What do you mean?
I mean, he's got a bit. Well, he's lying then, isn't he?
That's what I'm saying. He's got to be lying because we know how it's measured. I know.
And like John just said, you're a good Christian. You wouldn't do that. But there's other people who, show that they possibly might be a good Christian, but are not really a proper Christian, and they will lie and deceive, just like some pastors sort of promote that.
But there is a distinction between knowing you didn't do something and knowing the truth of reality. You can't say that they knew it was a flat plane or they knew outer space didn't exist. You can't say that.
Correct.
That's not the lie.
Yeah, the lie is that they went somewhere they didn't go. The lie is, Yeah, we went up in the spaceship. We went out through the high-pressure gas into an area 10 to the minus 17 tour, looked out the window, took a photograph, went to the moon, landed on it, danced around, played golf, drove a moon buggy, and then came home. Well, they didn't do any of that. Any of it. But they said they did. That's why all their stories are so incongruent with one another. Inconsistencies all over the place, because none of them actually experienced a single unilateral event. If you ask somebody how to describe the stadium when they went to the football game, you can ask a random stranger on the other side of the stadium what his experience was, and other than seeing a slightly different angle of the game, most, if not all, of the details will be identical. There'll be a consistency. Whereas, yeah, we could see the stars, they were really bright. No, we couldn't see any stars. Yes, we used the navigation system with a sextant. We were just passengers. You know, all of these inconsistencies about fundamental aspects of the journey can be inconsistent because they didn't happen. That's why they're inconsistent. Yeah, like I say, doesn't mean they don't know that space is fake. It doesn't mean they know that the Earth's flat. It just means they know they didn't do what they said they did. Simple.
And you also have to consider listening very carefully to how they word things. Now, as far as the Apollo astronauts, absolutely, they're lying because they said they rode a moon buggy on there. But those were all absolute military, CIA, operatives. Okay, but everyone since then, I think, if you listen carefully, the way they say things, like low Earth orbit, we went to low Earth orbit, and that's loosely defined as above the Earth floating around. That's just ambiguous enough or vague enough that they could, in their hearts, think that they're telling the truth, and not outright lying. And they would do that for the same reasons I agree with one deck. They were just told, we can't go there now. And yeah, there's around, yeah, there's space and stuff like that. We just can't go there now. That's why we say low Earth orbit. They can get pretty high. I think they
Okay, so tell me what the greater good of man is. What is the greater good of man that there's planets out there that we live on a ball? How is that the greater good of man?
None of it. That's why Paul told Timothy to stay away from the vain babblings of people who claims that are talking about science, falsely so called false science. Basically, Paul was saying, don't get messed around with pseudoscience. Everything that is science, falsely so called, stay away from. It's vain babbling. It has no worth. And that's how you can tell. That's why I'm excited about the book. That's how you can tell the difference between one ideology, heliocentrism, and the other, which is, true biblical cosmology and measurements of the earth, is that there is purpose and usefulness for every part of it as God created it to be. The ones who are lying, obfuscating, and fibbing, or whatever you want to say, they are dabbling in the stuff that is pseudoscience, worthless, no big, retrograde. What is that? What does that have to do with anything, practical in life? That's why everyone avoids it, because it's all that just useless information that has no purpose. So everyone ignores it. Yeah, I think that it's somewhere in the middle between what one deck's saying is we're just kind of like told that we just can't get there yet, but it's all real. And absolute liars who had to lie because it was a different situation, military, and they could be told that we've got to do this to beat the Russians. And so they were doing their duty. Regretfully, as they
were to have to lie. They had to because of honor, and became drunks and terrible people in the process. But
I don't need that to expose a lie. I don't need to know their motivations. Like any motivation will do. You can appeal to a million of them. All you need to do is show that they have knowledge of what they're saying is false and they're doing it to deceive.
Okay, so they were fully aware. Hold on. They were fully aware of gas law, right? They're fully aware, but yet they promote heliocentrism and they sell it to the world as a reality.
Where in gas law does it say heliocentrism is wrong?
Well, what do you mean? Gas fills space. So to say that outer space is a vacuum, then where's the gas filling it? And they were fully aware of that.
I don't think they are. The second law of thermodynamics is fairly new to our understandings of. I think it's the Industrial Revolution is when the second law of thermodynamics comes out.
So in 1969, wait. 1969, when they supposedly went to the moon, they had no idea about gas filling space.
No, I'm saying that the preconceived notion that there was a space that gas wasn't filling was already embedded into the zeitgeist of the time. They may not have seen the contradiction.
I guess. I don't know.
That's
the thing is, it's a mute point and a red herring.
You can only say they're lying.
Knowledgeable of the second law, it's still a violation. And that for you to pretend that you're going into an area of volume that doesn't exist to perpetuate to the masses and then to double down with your deception makes you a liar.
also remember that their definition of quote unquote space has been fluid all these years. So, like I was saying, space can be low Earth orbit where there's still atmosphere.
I don't say from what he did and how he did it. And I don't think, maybe you're close to Kevin Farmer's close to it. You guys give a little bit more. I would say.
Neil, I can't believe you had your mic on. You of all people.
Well, I just got some bad news that the voice of the New York Yankees has passed away. John Sterling died.
He was like 90 something, wasn't he? Or 100 something.
87 years old. The Yankees win. The Yankees win. Has passed away.
Wow. He's been around forever.
Well, I only started hearing in the 90s. What's that one, Deck?
I'm just saying, good age. It comes to us all, doesn't it, in the end? But how old was he? 87?
Yeah, he measured it with time.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
So I was watching this movie. Did anybody see the movie with Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger? In this movie, he makes
Expendables.
No, the Escape. He makes a freaking sextant because they don't know where they are in this prison ship. So he makes a sextant to find out where they are. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, of course, because he got the almanac from the prison library.
Did he? Or are you joking with me?
I'm just joking with you. There's this fairly common theme where if you've got a sextant, you can navigate, and it's like, no, that's one thing that you'd need in a series of things that you'd need, but they very rarely whip out the almanac, do they?
Well, he might have, because I only seen parts of it. I didn't see the whole thing. That's why I'm asking you. But it was kind of
And you need
interesting watching him do it.
Yeah, and you need a snooker table.
Snooker table.
And you had to calculate
Who was it?
because
You know, because if the ship's bouncing round, like, you know, you need your horizontal baseline, you could always use a snooker table.
Oh, of course,
Somebody
I forgot.
was telling us what.
Snooker tables find their own level.
May I ask?
Reminded me of FED versus Earth Chronicles with Josh Reed.
Did
Yeah, remember that, Nathan?
No. What do you mean?
Yeah, when Josh was going at it as though you were measuring the elevation angles when you brought up celestial navigation, and he keeps on bringing up that you could use a table instead of the sextant. It was laughable.
I don't remember him saying that, but fine, if you say so.
Yeah, it's there in your recording of the video of FED versus Earth Chronicles.
Just out of curiosity about Sylvester Stallone, when he made his sextant, did he use a straight baseline for his bottom leg of his angle?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh dear.
I was wondering, I mean, you know, just going on a celestial navigation, obviously you do have corrections like you know, your dip correction and all that. You also have correction for refraction when they say, you know, if the star is, I don't know, is it not above 20 degrees, you've got a count, you know, there's a correction for refraction, but obviously they're using that term wrong, aren't they? Because it can't be refraction, can it? Because there's only one medium that we're looking for.
Let me read it to you.
It is the distortion of the sky into a dome. That's what celestial refraction is. It's taking your observation and twisting it to conform to the celestial dome. That's all it is.
But it's not actually refraction, though, is it? The correction.
Wow.
Because we're just looking at a light in the atmo. There's not a barrier between two mediums.
Exactly.
So the term,
Listen, in Escape Plan, the character uses a homemade sextant to calculate the latitude of the prison ship. By taking nightly star sightings from an open-top deck, he provides data that allows Sylvester Stallone to determine they are on an oil tanker in the Atlantic Ocean near Morocco. Doesn't say anything about going and finding an almanac, Nathan.
How did he make the sextant? How did he make it?
In a fight, well, he said he needed somebody's glasses. So they punched some guy out and they took his glasses. So he used the glasses, and I guess he was using string.
Well, now, to establish latitude, you don't need an almanac. You just need one measurement. But to decipher where you are in the world on that latitude line, you're going to need the almanac for that.
All right. He constructs the makeshift sextant using a pair of glasses, paper, and a small tube. While permitted to visit the deck for evening prayers, Javid measures the angle of specific stars, specifically mention of the polar star, to find their latitude, which is 30 degrees. The measurement, combined with observing the weather and general ship movement, tells the team they are in a specific area of the Atlantic.
Any detail towards an index arm or a multimeter to give you the degrees and the minutes?
Well, here's inaccuracy. The movie has a technical error as the character is in an enclosed courtyard where measuring the true horizon is difficult.
Not if he
Well, you
used
wouldn't you wouldn't
plumb-
need any of that to establish latitude. All you need is an angle measurement to Polaris, and you can establish your latitude. Now, I don't know about that other stuff of knowing.
Yeah, that's all I was
which
getting at. It's like,
ocean
what are you
you're in,
using
yeah.
to get the angle?
John's talking.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, John. Yeah, I was just stating, what was being used to actually give you the elevation angle. Go ahead, bro.
But like you say, if you've got a dead bearing, or you can use the weather and tides to give you a rough guide of where you actually are. They might have sort of had a bearing of where they was anyway, and then once they just established the latitude, they knew they was in that vicinity somewhere. So yeah, but they did measure an angle anyway.
Yeah, and he could have, if he used a tube, then he probably just had a plumb line hanging down from that and a makeshift protractor. Get a basic idea of how many degrees Polaris was up there. And couldn't they use the azimuth of the sun, find where solar noon is and figure out sort of where their longitude was?
I guess so. If you knew, like, if you hadn't slept and you knew what time it was, you could figure out your longitude that way by solar noon. You get it within, at least time frame. What is that? Hour time frame? Oh my, a time zone. You could get it within a time zone of your area you're in.
Well, I put it in Master B, and it's a guy going over it. I don't know if you could play it, Nathan, but it's just a guy describing how he did it in the movie.
How he measured the Earth flat sounds kind of normy to me.
Now, how he made the sextant and how he utilized it to determine where they were in the Atlantic Ocean.
I mean, if they could have got the heights of the star, I mean, the bearing might have been a bit more accurate.
Have some knowledge of the general VP tracks of certain stars. If you know you're at 30 latitude and you know that high stars passing over that area are, which high stars are passing over that area. They just generally needed to know, what ocean they were in and what landmass they were close to.
Yeah, it was just a matter of you not dying, not a matter of puffing out your chest and fart sniffing of how absolute you are. What a great guy you are. Oh, look, here's where we are. And we didn't die.
Ruhif got within 4 miles of his location on a flat plane.
How much did you say?
What was that?
Linear miles.
He said 4 miles. Really?
Yeah, tell us all about it.
Were those octamiles? Listen, I put the better version of it in Master B. The second one I put it in takes you right to the juicy part of how he made the sextant. Pretty clever.
But I reckon I could get my latitude just using my arm extended up from using my nose or my eye. And,
Well, that's how you used to do it.
Yeah, I could just use my arm to get a rough idea of my latitude, I reckon.
They used to use their hands and place them one on top of the other to establish an angle.
Didn't they use a quadrant or something like that? Basically, a big stick.
Yeah, Columbus used quadrant and sextant. Yeah, that's the early navigation.
Victory Royale!
Nice.
Listen, there's more to life than playing video games. That's what somebody sent me That's a message somebody sent me. You guys keep liking to Nathan while he just plays video games. He uses you like you're all a bunch of suckers.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, like we should be trying to steal his book, right?
Let him play a game. It gives us time to talk.
No, let's take over this. Should take over the show.
One deck.
We keep
I got the perfect name for it.
What?
Mario and one deck.
Yeah, because we've come as friends listening to them, and we're doing all the work. We're keeping
Mario
the
and Mario. No, Mario on one deck, and we're not refracted.
Yeah, Mario on one deck. We're not. Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's reflected with an L.
No. I stick with the original names. I don't go with those changed names.
Huh.
Why did you change it to reflected?
Because of the jump. What was it? We called it getting T-jumped. Remember? He said that's reflection.
Oh, he's right.
You're gonna bring up that guy now.
Oh man, it was crazy because like the same argument that T-jump hit Witsit with, and Witsit was like looking at him like it was retarded. Witsit turned around and tried to use on us. Remember?
No.
Basically, we all have senses of humor and we love a good inside joke.
Well, I can't remember exactly what it was that T-Jump said to Witsit, but it was during that time that the Ether Wars were going on. It was right there towards the end of them, and we had just reviewed a video with Witsit and Brian having a back and forth, and Witsit used the same fallacious argument that T-Jump had used on him a couple of weeks before. And that's why we said, are you T-jumping me?
What's interesting is I seen LVA Paul in the chat over there on the other channel, and he was over here today.
Well, politics.
He was warmly welcomed over there in the Scumbags channel. I wonder if he realizes that one of the pharmaceutical scumbag was the chief guy in painting his image.
Yeah, like everybody in that camp hated him.
Yep.
What's changed, man? This world's crazy,
Yeah, they welcomed him in, but he was like, "Hey, LVA Paul, long time no see." I'm like, "Do you have any clue that this pharmaceutical thief is the one that freaking poisoned everybody's way of viewing him. He was really serious on it.
Well, the thing is, whenever you've done something really bad wrong, you want allies and you don't really care how they come, you know? And
Well, the only thing he did wrong, John, was when they got that call and they were trying to tell us Nathan's the problem with the show. Remember that? And they freaking crucified us for taking the phone call. Remember? Adam was like, well, why we weren't invited? And that was my only issue with LBA Paul was it's Nathan's show. How the hell are you going to tell me Nathan's the problem with his show? That's why I drew the line.
yeah, that I remember. Like,
Was it horizontal?
I can understand. Like, and I try to tell Adam, I can understand why you're upset, but it's not like we engaged in, bashing you or anyone else. We spoke our piece. We said we thought what was wrong with this entire situation, and we left. That's all we could do.
And he popped up in our chat.
Some people don't care about things. Some people only worried about themselves and their ego, and nothing else matters.
Well, this topic seems to draw in the the lowest of the low people. There are some real like this low-level scumbags in this arena, and I think it's because of how acceptable it is to be abusive and horrible to people in this topic.
Oh yeah, and like we've said about schooling and education, the actual fact of the matter gets lost. It all becomes about ad hominem attacks, low snap. It's gone past the measurement. This is what we were saying before. Where Nathan's book's unique, second book, sorry, is unique because it ends. We're finalising the argument. We've still got globe earthers will always argue. Anti-flat earthers will always argue because they have to argue because they haven't got the truth. So they're arguing about the belief. The anti-globers are still arguing. Nathan's first book is more of an argumentation book, I've been told, to keep the argument going about how far you should see and everything else. So there's anti-globers still wanting to argue who call themselves flat earthers, whereas I think we're now saying there's no argument to have. This is the road now that will lead to the end of the argument, even though the argument's finished. But now there's still a bit of, there's only sort of us really who are on that, pardon the pun, level, and hopefully this book and us keep going on about it and repeating what we're saying is that there's never been an argument. There's no argument. You can't argue with the measurements.
Right, but the quickest way to destroy any debate is to take away the valid point of contention. Once that is removed, you no longer have a debate. You don't have anything to talk about because you don't have a point of contention.
Well, you can't take away the globe because there never was one, was there? Only a mathematical one, which was measured flat.
Well, see, even what they call a mathematical globe, it's not really. It's a celestial sphere where you're living inside of a ball. But that's what they actually are appealing to. They don't ever have any kind of mathematical there's no mathematics that shows you living on a ball.
Well, the ball comes from the surface level parallel to eye level and the depression angle measurement. So the so-called distance to the non-physical horizon, doesn't it? So yeah.
Well, it takes. See that for that to develop into an argument, right? You need the flat earther to say the horizon is your eye level, right? They have to say that for them to move on to make the argument. Right? That's when they can put the false dichotomy on you and say, well, if the horizon appears to lower as we rise in elevation, then it's a ball. If it is your eye level, it won't appear to lower as we rise in elevation. So you got to have that false dichotomy.
Yeah, when the horizon's never, ever been defined as physical anyway. Except for the heliocentric.
How do you define physical?
Something that's tangible.
So rainbows are not physical?
What were you saying? Because I can see them.
Yeah, the way I've always understood physical was anything you can experience with your senses.
Yeah, so your sight. Well, I don't know. Physical to me, to me, I mean, it's something you can go and touch. It's tangible. If you can measure to it, you'd have to be able to touch it physically. If you were measuring a distance between 2 points, you'd have to put the tape measure at one point and the tape measure at the other. You'd have to know it was touching that.
So you're saying you can touch a rainbow, or that rainbows are not physical?
No, I didn't say any of that. And what I was saying is that the horizon has never been defined as physical, but then it is defined as physical in the heliocentric model. That it's got a distance to it. So they're saying it's physical and there's a distance, measurable distance to it, aren't they?
Well, they're asserting it's a tangible geometric edge of a sphere. I think the physical part is you're getting into territory where physical needs to be defined.
Right. Maybe, yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying, to me, in the way I view things.
No, you got a point. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Right,
yeah,
like,
when you physical is anything to do with your senses. So if we're saying the horizon's not physical, well, can you see the horizon? Can you see a rainbow? Yes, you can. Is that physical then? If it ties in with that. So you've got to be careful with your words, is what you're saying. I realise that's what you're saying.
Yeah. And yeah. So, whereas I could define the horizon as physical, it doesn't make it tangible. You know what I mean? I think tangible might be the better word there.
Yeah, tangible.
Like a tangent line, right?
Yeah, like a tangent line. That's what tangent is. Yeah, it's you can't touch it. It's not. That's what annoys me about this tangent line thing. You might find you can draw a tangent line or use it in calculus or No one can show me a. I'm going to use the word again. Sorry, John. No one can show me a physical tangent line that I can use in reality. Can they?
What, to a ball? Because like I can pick up a basketball and draw a tangent line. Is that what you're talking about?
So you can draw. You can't. You have. There's not. So you can't pull a tangent line out your pocket or your toolbox. It's not tangible. That's why the word comes from tangent, tangible. Can't touch it. You can't. It's not something you can get hold of and use in reality. You can draw it or use it on a computer, but it's not tangible. The tangent line is not tangible. The words, I think it's a Latin word, means the same.
I think it just means to touch. And a tangent line is the conceptual mathematical tool that is used conceptually in certain mathematics and orthographic drawings of circles with a tangent line touching part of the circle. But physical reality doesn't exist.
Well, you can draw a tangent line in geometry. You can draw a tangent line to a sphere and calculate many things from that tangent. But
yeah.
I don't know if you could say that wasn't physical. You just drew the line, or tangible. You just drew the line. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but I mean that's in. Well, you want to, I know what you're saying, but if you're out in nature, in physical nature, navigating to get positions, yeah, you're not going to be pulling a tangent line out your pocket, a physical, touchable tangent line. It's a line that you can draw on a piece of paper with a dingleberry drawn underneath it. You don't have a tangent mirror on that I coined that phrase, by the way. You don't have a
It's always on a piece
mirror.
of paper, isn't it?
Yeah, or a computer screen.
Yeah, a computer screen. Never in reality.
No, that's correct. That's what my point is. Yeah, it's never in reality.
You can consider it as real, like Mr. Rumpus.
No, see, when we show diagrams, right, we could also demonstrate them in reality, right?
yeah, but see, that's the thing with a tangent, right? And if you're talking about an object in your hand and you draw out tangent lines to it, you can show that in reality too, and you can get the correct dimensions of that sphere in your hand from
Yeah, but if you've got
mathematics.
Yeah, but you can't show that in reality, John.
Yeah, but if you've got a ball in your hand,
what does that even mean?
If I've got a basketball in my hand, yeah, held out, I can't draw a tangent line to that ball.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can't show that in reality, though.
I can't draw.
But you could get like a laser and set it up at your eye and point it out to the ball in your hand. You know what I'm saying?
So what?
Yeah, you could do that.
Oh, I'm almost wanting to pull an R one, but I'm not going to. I gotta go, guys. I'll see you later.
Yeah, we had your ass, and you know it.
What's he pulling?
It's a convenient escape there, my friend.
Running away.
No, but what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying, right? One deck, all of these pictures that they show you on paper or computer can never be demonstrated in reality. Well, you could show them a flight plan, right? Descent, you could show them takeoff, you could draw it up, and you could actually demonstrate it in reality by just freaking taking the flight.
Yeah, that's what I say. But I know what John meant about when I say the horizon has never been defined as physical. And I understand what John means, because if you look into the physical definition, it's all to do with your senses, and your sight is one of your senses. So if if you can see
Yeah, it must
the
be
horizon,
tangible too, though.
yeah, it must be tangible.
It's your senses, like it's got to be something you could see, but it also has to be something you can touch. It has to have some tangibility to it, and the horizon just doesn't have that.
Yeah, but maybe physical. Yeah, maybe that means all of the senses, not just picking one. Maybe you have to see. You have to see it. I mean, I can't say hear it. I can't hear a rainbow or hear the horizon, and feel it and touch it.
You can see a rainbow, so a rainbow does exist. You just can't use other senses or tools to measure its actual position, because it is always apparent based on your personal perspective of you seeing it. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Rainbows do exist. They're just not tangible in the sense that you can measure anything actual about them. You're just making an observation of something that happens.
Yeah, but the horizon is different than the stars, though.
No, the horizon is still the horizon as defined is apparent always.
Right.
So
Yeah, but
you can only
the horizon
measure its horizon. Well, you can only use it practically as a way of measuring horizontality of your surroundings.
Yeah, but the horizon is intertwined with the surface of Earth, which is physical. It's where the surface of the Earth appears to meet the sky. So
appears to meet the sky, correct.
Right.
It's in relationship. Hang on, mate. It's in relationship. Yeah, it's
one
in
at a time. We're all
relationship.
getting excited here. One at a time.
Yeah, it's in relationship. The horizon is in relationship to the surface of Earth. You probably wouldn't have an horizon without the surface of Earth, where you could probably have a rainbow without the surface. That's not it's not intertwined with the surface of Earth. A rainbow, the horizon is. It's where the
and that,
you know what I'm saying anyway.
And that's what you're measuring. That's what you're using the horizon for, is to establish the measurable, tangible surface of the Earth. You're not actually measuring the distance along the surface of where that horizon is. It's apparent. So
Nathan summed it up a few months ago. I think he was talking about Riley or something. And you can't describe or explain the horizon without use of mentioning
That's correct.
the surface of Earth.
That's correct.
So it's got where a rainbow is. I mean, I don't know why I don't even need to talk about a rainbow when I'm talking about. The reason this came up was because I mentioned physical. So what I'm getting back to is the horizon is connected to physical. So physical, yeah, because it's referencing the Earth, which you can touch, which is tangible. So yeah, tangible might be the right term. But I've been saying it for months to ballers, anti-flat earthers. The horizon's never been defined as a physical location. I've got it in bloody poems from years ago. So I've just been saying that willy-nilly. Whether, it's nice to go over it. I might not be, that might be the wrong terminology to be using. The horizon's never been defined. The horizon has never been defined as a tangible location. Maybe should be better. I don't know. You've got to get your words right. I think that's what John was saying to me, which I'll take on.
But they describe it as freaking physical. They claim the horizon is physical. That you can get there.
Well, yeah, you can get. It's got a distance to it.
Yeah.
It could be no more than this distance at this height.
Imagine the first people that were sailing. All right, let's go out to that line that we see there. They didn't even call it horizon. Now they're sailing out, and they never get there.
It makes me laugh.
Moving away.
It makes me laugh though. The horizon can be no more than 1.22 times the square root of the observer's height in feet.
Right? Oh, really?
Yeah, but that in itself is saying. I mean, you shouldn't even have to say about the observer's height in feet, even though that's height in feet of surface level or sea level.
Oh dear.
Because if there was a distance to it, the distance would be the distance regardless of any height. Because the height is just on about the observation and how you see it. If it's a physical, tangible place, then the height of the observer above surface level has got nothing to do with it anyway, because it's just going to be that distance from wherever you are at that point.
Let's face it, that black swan was a whole freaking let's all go on the ball. Now let's argue from this ball.
Yeah.
I don't think we disputed that, because weren't there whole days of conversations about how that we were through the modus tollens making the question for the Globers. That's on us.
Yeah, I agree. I don't remember
Well, you've got
using a black swan.
You've got the oil rigs there. Where should the horizon be, Neil? Should it be in front or behind?
Wait a second. We got oil rigs, and those oil rigs are at a what? A distance?
Yeah, forget that. Where's the horizon? Should it be there, or there?
No. Oh, wait a second. I want to talk about the distance.
Well, that doesn't matter. You can physically see where is the horizon.
No, forget the horizon. Forget the horizon. Let's talk about the oil rigs that he don't want to talk about because they're squiggly. There's a distance to those oil rigs. I think one is 9 miles, one is 8 miles, or whatever, 10 miles. Miles, you say? How about we talk about them miles?
Yeah, just knocks everything on the head, doesn't it? What height are them oil rigs, Neil, from sea level?
Height, you say? Then we start doing from now on. Height, you say? Angle, you say? Distance, you say?
Distance? Height? Miles? Yeah.
It took us a while to get there, but we got there. And now that we're there, you can't help but stay there. I mean, why would I want to leave?
Listen, if you ever want to have an argument with someone, Neil, right, buy Nathan's first book and just go and argue about the distance to the horizon, mate.
There you go. Let's talk about this here. That's funny. Yeah, the first book is The Globe Terminator.
Oh, it's funny. I love using that first book.
You had me when you first started. Listen, when you first started saying that, I was like, oh shit, Nathan's got a book out? First book? Where was I?
His first book.
That's that half-deck guy again.
Listen, Yeah, get this for the pun. Nathan's first book was a learning curve.
Oh, that's funny. That is classic.
Nathan's first book was a learning curve. How about that one?
That is perfect, man. Very good. That is ace.
I might write a poem about that. Have you already done one?
Yeah, but Nathan got it straight with the second one.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Now you got to come up with the second book. He straightened it out.
He got it straight with the second one.
Oh dear.
The first book you may buy, you'll take a learning curve, but the second book, he straightens everything out.
We've just figured out the measurements, and we've taken the learning curve out of understanding the recovery. No learning curve required. It's measured flat.
Funny.
He better be recording this.
There's a lot of truth to that. That the normies don't need the learning curve. With Betty's book, it's still a learning curve. You've got to learn this citations. You've got to learn the ninja stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And so it literally, you want to be able to just expose people to the truth without a learning curve that makes them go to sleep. It's measured flat. That's it. Move on.
Yeah. Listen, Daddy, that's why I'm just saying, and we was all involved, but it's not mine. What I'm saying is, I'm not the greatest person for remembering things or all that pre-argue. I've said this story before. All that pre-arguing about, talking about gas pressure without containment, remembering about gravity, Einsteinian, Newtonian. I get wrapped up in it. I'm not like Nathan or a lot of the other guys. I can stumble. I'm not, brilliant at all that, right? So I've always been thinking, how can I make this fucking easy for myself? Just get this easy and boil it down to, and then as we're talking, as we've been through the shows and all of us together, that's why I thought the 30 words was great, because I thought, well, none of these words are anything to do with curvature or measuring curvature, so I can just boil it down to that. Yeah, you're not using that word. You're not using elevation, angle, horizontal. So to help my thick self, I needed to make it really simple. But by me saying that and sort of undermining myself a little bit, what I'm going to say in defense is it was simple all the time. And that's come to the realization it was just so simple anyway.
Right.
That's all you needed. Simplicity.
Do you remember when it was a big thing on the show? Even Refracted was kind of even saying that, no, you still got to know it. And I was like, why do I have to know any of that shit if you're telling me it's measured flat? Doesn't that take everything away? Why do I have to know all of this other stuff? If I can get somebody to agree that it's measured flat, then everything else should go out the window. I don't need to know any of this nonsense. Why do I got to get wrapped up in gravity and wrapped up in the solar system and wrapped up in all of this other stuff when it's measured flat? You even agreed with me.
Yeah, that's where I was coming from, because I needed to make this easier as possible for myself when I was arguing # with all the clowns. And getting dragged into stuff that I didn't really know how to debate, and people were better at debating than me. # debate. So if I could just get it down to the bare knuckles somehow that's got nothing to do with, elevation angle measurements, and theodolites measure angles, elevation angles, distance and vertical and horizontal angles. And we use plumb and horizontal and perpendicular, and south is
South, you say?
Horizontal distance. Yeah. So if I can just get all these things together, and between us all what we were saying, and we put it all together, then it just makes it so simple. Now that, as Nathan's just explained in the show today, going forward, this now will make it so much easier for the new layman's coming into it. You don't have to go through all that crap we've just been through.
I told you the other
but
day
if you
at
wanted to-
Awakenings.
If you wanted to go through all that crap, as you call it, right, you'd still have to learn and understand implicitly how flat Earth must be to derive things like radial values with distance measurements in miles. That is to say, so long as our rhetoric stays tight moving forward, everybody who comes to this discussion, if they want to engage in the old school way of arguing between flat earthers and anti-flat earthers, if you want to call them that, right, is to understand how sphericity is created with flat earth measurements. So if we are constantly pointing out, well, in order for you to have this fart sniffing argument, you must first use flat earth measurements and prerequisites on both sides, it boils it down to the fact that the simplistic part of the argument, understanding how the miles derive into a squared function for curvature, well, then you've got to first understand what mile is, then understand how a squared function works, then understand how you can apply that squared function of a linear distance to a claim to be surface below your feet. So the last part is how it applies to curve. The first part is understanding how a mile works. Well, you can as to answer Neil's question, why would I need it? Well, you don't. In order to have the fart sniffing argument, you've got to understand the first bit of Earth being measured flat initially. And like you say, as soon as you do, well, why do I need the rest of it again? If we're going to have the argument, I've got to understand how flat it must be measured, so I can use those measurements to derive sphericity to tell you how spherical it isn't. Can't I just use the flat Earth measurements we're both going to start with? Well, you can if you perceive that there's still an argument to have, because there isn't.
Exactly. Well said.
Yeah, Nathan. And that's what I say. That's where the book's going to take everybody. You know, we've had the learning curve. Now we're on the straight and level path.
I told you on Earth Awakenings, that guy was blown away when he put it together. He was like, "Oh my goodness, this is groundbreaking." He still hasn't come here though. I've invited him a couple of times, but yeah, it just took a measurement.
Yeah. So if somebody comes in like who's new to it and they're thinking, "God, what's all this gravity about?" and you know, everything else and the refraction and all the nonsense that goes with it, and we could just sit down and say, listen, in order to have any sort of a globe, this is the first thing that you're going to require, and it's probably going to start from sea level, yeah, and then you're going to be measuring elevation angles from it from everything else going forward.
Yeah, and then you're hoping he says, "Wait a second. So why do I even have to go any further?"
You don't. It's that simple.
No, you don't. But like I say, I read I still have it. I do it for a little bit of fun. I keep an eye on things. I read a couple of texts out today, so I send the odd message off to people, and it's good for the show sometimes when I read them out, like you do, Neil. F Daddy does the same. But deep down in my heart, I know I don't need to do any of that. You know, I know sea level's level, and it's the 0 degree baseline for all elevation angle, for all elevation profiles on Earth. You know, you can research that, and you'll get told that. So yeah, that's great. That Neil. If someone's just but if somebody's just got hit with that, and it's like, God, is it that simple? That's just been like, there you go. We've done it all for you. You don't have to argue about anything. That's all you need to know. That's how that's where the measurement starts for everything.
Yep, giving you your distances and your heights and your depths and your angles for every single measurement that was ever made by anyone from our flat Earth, by it being the antecedent already of it being a horizontal plane to give you those measurements. There's metric flat.
Yeah, when John came out with that baseline, it's actually groundbreaking. It took us to a whole nother level.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was that guy Mario. I thought it was that guy Mario with that poem. Mario with that poem. I think he called it the globe.
We can just find the Toronto chap.
And one deck tried to pinch it. That's where it all started, I feel. Oh, God. Any news on the book, Nathan, if you're there? Any feedback?
Sorry, were
You
you
said
asking me something?
earlier. Sorry.
Were you asking me something?
Go on, Neil. I'm just saying, any news on the book, sort of thing? Have you heard any news? I know it's been weekend and bank holiday, but how are you with the book?
I don't know. I sent him an email. I didn't chase him up all last week because I just wanted a week off from it, frankly. So I only chased him up early this morning before he'd have got up. So this morning he'll hopefully get my email saying any ETA on when the book will actually be available to purchase. And I said to him, can you drop the undertitle or the subtitle and just have it be called Measured Flat? I asked him if there was anything else he needed from me, and I'm just waiting for his response. Hopefully there won't be anything else he needs from me, and I'll just come back and say either it will be available on X date or it's available now. I don't know. We'll see. I'll let you know tomorrow if I get a response between now and then.
Yeah, no worries, mate. I was just asking. That was all. Just for a chat. Yeah.
Now, that thing that you sent me, one deck. Now, this is what that guy, Guns of Nazarone, was saying, but I didn't see it anywhere because when I looked at it, it was just what they entitled the book, Welcome to Flat Earth. But now you're showing me something where they have all roads lead to Flat Earth underneath it. So I don't know. And I've also heard there's a spoof book out, too, where they're mocking
Well,
it.
that might be. Yeah, but that might be the spoof because it wasn't quantum eraser. It was quant eraser or something like that.
Yeah.
I just went over the weekend because I remember speaking to you guys and Nathan was saying, yeah, maybe next week. So I'm thinking, and I just thought, I was just sat there messing about. I thought, I'll go on Amazon and put All Roads Lead to a Flat Earth book. And that popped up. I thought, what the hell? Is this like it's some sort of joke?
I've got some scuttlebutt on that because I've been following that. That 2 weeks ago, probably, or not long after Betty's book came out, there was a spoof book that said all the whatever the title is of.
Welcome to Flat Earth.
Welcome to Flat Earth.
How dare you?
And then it had the subtitle of All Roads to Flat Earth. I may have even taken a screenshot of it. That was a spoof book. It had, you're right, one deck. It had Quantum Ear Acer or something like that. And it was a misspelling. And it had both titles in the title. I looked this morning, and the spoof book's still there, but it does not have the subtitle "All Roads Lead to Flat Earth." So it's priced $2 less than the real book. I think it's a spoof book. I think it's.
So who put that out?
I don't want to even open it. For all I know, AI does it.
Oh,
literally.
okay.
It's just creepy how that happens. And
so is that going to happen to Nathan's as well?
Yes, I would guarantee that it will. And that's why I think.
Yeah, but
this
wait
morning.
a second, you can't protect yourself from that?
No, you can actually press charges. You can go through that process and do that. No one knows at Amazon. I swear, everything's being run by AI and by nobody personally. There's all kinds of spoof books and people stealing stuff and publishing it themselves through Amazon. It's as easy as.
Yeah, but Nathan's not doing that. Nathan's using a publisher.
Yes. Oh, that's
but listen.
With the DD was talking about suing. because showing the publisher, Betty's book is self-published, as far as I can tell. There's no actual publisher. So that's another interesting wrinkle. But I don't think there's anything you can do to stop it other than to complain and have, Amazon look at it and take it out.
I'm just wondering though, like that spoof book like that I sent Neil. So that's on there for a price. You can purchase it. I wonder what book you would receive. Would it be Nathan's first book? With that?
I think it's only available digitally. So it's just a digital spoof. And I don't know. I
wonder what you'd get. I wonder what book you would get though. Because that's not a legitimate front cover, is it? So what's written inside the book, I wonder? That'd be Nathan's second book.
A lot of spoofing.
Unless somebody's just, some anti-flurf has just, thought, well, I'll just put this cover together, put that together, put a load of crap inside it, and I'll sell this. And if people buy it, they buy it. It doesn't, if it doesn't make sense.
Wait a second. According to Surf Daddy, it's AI generated. So you could put out a book tomorrow and AI will generate a spoof on it. Is that what you're saying, Surf Daddy?
I'm saying that I don't trust anything nowadays. I'm not saying it's definitively, there may be a person pushing buttons to make a spoof book, and it's literally just a blank document that you could click on and there's nothing there. It's just digital as far as I can tell. So it's not, you're not getting a paper copy.
If you read down on that spoof book in the small print, it does mention something about Super Mario.
What happened to Luigi?
So wait a second, because I remember somebody asked her in chat, and that's what she was saying, that it's done by AI. So
the majority of comments that I've seen have been complaining about AI slop graphics, and they've in parentheses and AI text question mark. So it's reading the book for people that say they have read it. It's reading like it's disjointed. It's not readable in any kind of context. It's AI generated sloppy graphics.
But hang on a minute. That sounds. Excuse me. That sounds like Nathan's first book, anyway.
It's got a lot of links in it too.
Yeah, a lot of links in a book. Doesn't. Oh yeah. You can't tell.
Mate, we need you. Excuse me, mate. We need you to sort this out, right, once and for all. You seem to know a lot about this. It's on your toes now, mate. We need you to sort this out, this spoof book, find out what's going on, get it deleted, and then just give us a shout with the outcome when it's all sorted out.
I'll go so far as to actually go on Amazon and look and see if there's a sample available and what the sample is, and see what it's about. But that's as far as I'll go on it. I'm not going to pay. If it was on Kindle Unlimited, which I have, which is a bunch of free books, I just
don't click on anything.
Well, if it's through Amazon, I should be able to click on those. So that's one thing Amazon does do, is protect you from that kind of stuff. But they don't. I mean, I got 10 or 15 years ago, I got a copy of 1984 by George Orwell for 99 cents. I didn't know who I was buying it from or whatever. Someone had taken that, made a copy of it digitally, and then published it on its own and priced it for 99 cents. And I bought it and reread it, and about a month or so later, I got a notice on my Kindle that that book was taken off of my reader. And that was because the publisher, quote unquote, didn't have rights to publish the book. And so they just took it off and then refunded my 99 cents and deleted it off my Kindle. So that's the extent of what they could do if there's a complaint. You can't complain about copyright violation because it's not titled. I guess it is titled same, but the author's name is different, and it's obviously a spoof book. Just the whole world is just set to confuse and disorient people about stuff, about what's real and not.
I don't think the second thief's author was their names was spelled incorrectly. So
I don't know if anything's real anymore. I just want to just go to my barn and pet my sheep and just be left alone.
crazy, innit? Absolute crazy. The crap you have to go through on here talking to people and the absolute nonsense you have to listen to in conversation and text messages about, flat and level not being connected, and so many flat elevation angles will eventually equal curvature. And then even if you're trying to publish a book, so then that's like, wow, what's going on here? There's somebody else saying, using that Nathan's, book title. I mean, what the hell? It's just crazy, isn't it?
One deck. If you rent a place from me, right, and your 30 words and your poems, does that make that my intellectual property? The stuff you wrote, the stuff you wrote while you're renting from me. I own the house that you're renting. So that means, does everything you write in that room my intellectual property?
No. But if you said to me, Neil, that you're writing a poem, you want to write a poem and maybe publish a book, and I'm your friend, and I've wrote a few poems, and and you said, one deck, I've got this poem, so I've titled it "The Earth is Measured Flat," but I don't know if that's the right title, and have a read of it one deck and see what. So I read it, and I said, Neil, it sounds all right, but I think with a little bit of help from your friend, I could come to your apartment, as a friend, and I'm gonna help you sort of reword it and rewrite it for you as a friend, because you've already told me that you've started this project and it's yours. Yeah, I'm going to come in and help you, and I do come in and help you, and I change the title to "The Globe is Measured Flat," and I reword it a little bit and say, there you go, I've helped you. Read that now, Neil, your new thingy, and I've helped you as a friend. That's yours.
Anyway, with that, I'm going to say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you for liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
But when you measure it flat, it contradicts that. I'm spitting flat facts and that. And I know you don't like that. Google Maps is flat, it presents elevation profiles like that. I'm a spitting flat earth king. Sentence has a ring, doing my own thing. If earth was a big roast chicken, factually finger licking chicken, we just got the measurements missing. I'm spitting eggs and begs, begging the question lesson. I've said it before, time after time. I'm the spitting flat earth king of rhyme.